Welcome to Table Talk, the place for deep conversations in the Geekverse. And trust me, when we tear into a subject, we go deep. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. Each episode, I'll be talking with one or more creators, authors, illustrators, publishers, or other movers and shakers in games, TV, books, movies, or other areas of the Geekverse. Regular guests include Douglas A. Burton, the author of Faraway Bird, a multi-award-winning historical fiction novel of the Byzantine Empress Theodora. He's also the author of The Heroine's Labyrinth, an alternative story structure to the hero's journey that often occurs in stories with feminine heroes. That structural framework frequently comes up in our analysis of story. Brianna De Silva, she's the director and co-writer of The Cultists, a Lovecraftian comedy mockumentary-style web show here on YouTube, and the author of The City of Reckoning, an epic fantasy novel of political intrigue, the ethics of war, and young love. Cameron Pasha is a screenwriter, director, novelist, and was a writer and producer on the series Kings, a producer on NBC's Bionic Woman, and a co-producer and writer for Sleeper Cell. He's also written for the CW series Nikita and Roswell, New Mexico. He's been breaking news from inside Lucasfilm, Disney, and Hollywood. His analysis and commentary have become very popular on YouTube. We regularly meet to discuss and analyze stories, and when we do, we dive into graduate-level seminars on story structure and writing. Come on in and let's go deep. And when I say we're going deep, I mean you'd better bring your hard suit. Other guests have included Lou Anders, the author of the Thrones and Bones fantasy novels, Once Upon a Unicorn, the creator and publisher of the Norengard RPG, and the author of Star Wars, A Pirate's Price, the book that explains why the Millennium Falcon is on the planet Batu at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Mark Tassin, the creator of the World of Ataltis, head of Mechanical Muse, former director of the Gen Con Writers Symposium, and the head developer of the new Cool Name RPG. Let's see, who else?
Bond. James Bond.
Well, not James Bond. Not yet. Maybe soon, though. But I have interviewed Jamie Stegmaier, the founder of Stonemaier Games, crowdfunder extraordinaire, and publisher of many hit board games like Scythe and Wingspan. Brian Colin, sculptor of the world of Revelo, Monster Busts, and the creator of the vast, grim, dark horror RPG. Ajit George, the Dungeons & Dragons author. We talked about game writing, education, and his contribution to Van Richter's Guide to Ravenloft and the development of the Journeys to the Radiant Citadel.
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, commander of the legions of Asgard, the rightful heir to the throne and the goddess of death.
Well, actually, that interview got rather spicy, so I think I'd better just keep that one to myself. Kate Wilson, a YouTuber, actress, host, and prolific geek guru who's now working to make a new show dedicated to the world of tabletop gaming a reality. So buckle up and get ready for a wild ride, because it's time to explore the worlds of tabletop gaming, sci-fi, fantasy, and all of geekdom through the eyes of those who are making things happen.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger. Ready to move out.
It's time for Table Talk. Hey everyone, welcome. It has been a while, but it is so good to be here. I'm Heath, I'll be your host tonight. Welcome to my home, welcome to the office, and welcome to Table Talk. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the movie Warfare, and we have really assembled a classic panel here for this discussion. And I learned about this movie through word of mouth, through the people on this panel right now. So I went out to see it so that we could have this discussion. I'd like to welcome a lot of the channel favorites. So James Bacon right here. Hello. With the Better with Bacon channel. Hello. The Titter Pig Rancher right here, also known as Sable Phoenix. And then also Douglas A. Burton. Welcome all.
All right. Good to see everybody, by the way.
I know.
Very much so.
For sure. It's been a while.
Back together with this. And
yeah, the old gang's all here.
I know. We're all together again to discuss this, and it's fantastic. Well, I guess we should do quick introductions. Let's do quick introductions. James Bacon, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Bacon. I run the Better with Bacon YouTube channel. We talk a lot about role-playing games, but in the context of really silly, highfalutin nonsense. I have fun with it. Come and say hi.
Hey, you posted. I haven't gotten to watch the dragon video yet, but he posted a video, before the dragon video, which was about elves and dwarves and their archetypical roles in fantasy role-playing games, which is fantastic. So definitely check out Better with Bacon.
I appreciate that.
Doug.
I'm Douglas A. Burton. I'm an author, and my latest book, The Heroine's Labyrinth, has been making its rounds. It's been, by the way, we really launched a lot of it here and discussions right here on Table Talk, and I'm pleased to announce that the book has been winning awards. In fact, I just found out yesterday that it won one of the larger awards, the Chanticleer Award.
Really?
For insight and instruction. It was a first place winner. So
congratulations.
Wow.
thank you guys, man. It's I was really nervous. Anyway, I'm really excited about that. I'm pleased to inform everyone on this channel that the book has been successful, because really you guys have been such a big part of the discussion, the launch, and even just thinking about it, like helping me think about it and communicate it. You guys have played such a big role on it. And I did start a YouTube channel, Douglas A. Burton. So come on and join me, and we'll talk there.
All right. And Titter Pig?
I'm a longtime regular on the channel, over 2 years by this point. And I'm also working on getting my own eponymous YouTube channel launched. The initial video is getting closer and closer. So, and Keith, you were the inspiration for even taking the plunge, and Bacon as well.
Thank you.
First place. So,
Yeah, likewise.
Always been.
You have that responsibility of influence, Heath.
Yeah, thank you. I take
They're
that
the
seriously.
acolytes of Heath.
Exactly.
All right. So we are here to talk about Warfare. And Doug, you texted me that you were going with Titter Pig to see the movie and how fantastic it was and all of this. And I didn't know anything about it. And so then I had to go and see it, and we had to organize this, and James Bacon went to see it. So I didn't watch anything about it before I went to see the movie. I didn't even watch the trailer. I went in completely cold. I just went in and watched. And since then, I have watched some reviews of the film, and I've been a little bit disappointed with what people say about it. I mean, generally positive reviews and things like that. But I think that this could definitely use the treatment of going deep in the Geekverse like we do, talking about story structure, talking about what this movie's doing beyond what everybody else is saying in 6 to 12-minute reviews on YouTube.
Right.
Yeah.
So you said you had some introductory notes, Doug. Do you want to start us off?
Well, yeah. So I'll just say, similar to Heath, I had no knowledge of this movie. It did, the word warfare doesn't even sound that interesting for a movie title, to be perfectly honest.
Well, we should talk about why that's the title too later.
Yes, we should.
Yes. As a note. Yes. Okay. Yes.
And I will say briefly, just to interject here, that before I saw it, I did see the trailer once. And it was the sort of trailer that, because I know how I react to war films, I tend to find them very emotional. I invest quite a lot in them. And I said a little bit about this, behind the scenes. Bridge on the River Kwai, Das Boot, Enemy at the Gates, any number, Black Hawk Down, any number of war films, I tend to invest heavily emotionally in them. And I remember seeing this trailer and knowing that it was going to affect me by the end. I knew it was going to happen, and that's I'll leave it there for now, Doug. Apologies for that.
We'll definitely need to get into the effects of it.
I agree. I too have a strong reaction to war films because male camaraderie is very familiar to all of us, and it's just something that happens. Boy Scouts. You see it on I watch my son play baseball on his team, and then suddenly you see the same dynamics that you would find hanging out with your friends in the most extreme, hellish circumstances possible. And it's hard because it's simultaneously so familiar and so unfamiliar at the same time that you can't help but be completely invested and then completely off guard and blown away at the same time. And like Bacon, all I did was watch the trailer. And what struck me about the trailer was not in and of itself that special. But it did one thing that made me go, I am afraid I want to see this. It was so mundane, the trailer. It was a guy who was on a bed. He's on a sniper rifle. just sitting there, and the camera's just and he's just sitting there, and someone's behind him, and he gives the guy a thumbs up, and I'm like, oh man, this is so boring that I think it's authentic. And I was like, I want to see this, and I looked up one bit of information on it, and it said that it's one of the best war films. I was like, okay, I'm going. One of the best war films in a long time. So I was like, I'm going. I think I texted Heath. I was like, dude, war. So I just started telling everybody, and I started getting it back in return. And I was like, I think that we're onto something here with Warfare. So I went to see it. In fact, I texted Titterpig, and I was like, hey, you want to see this? And he didn't respond immediately. And unexpectedly, my wife was like, I'll go see it with you. And I was like, really? So I went to see it with my wife. Titterpig went to go see it with somebody. So we both saw it. And then he's like, do you want to see it again? I was like, yes. So
I got out of I initially invited Candace to come with me to see it. And I walked out of that theater and was like, oh, no, that's not her kind of movie. Well, absolutely not.
My wife liked it. I couldn't believe
that's
it.
That's incredible. That's awesome.
And liked it in the way that is not like, wow, what a fun film. It was
like, isn't one of that's a different kind of response.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
This was like, what? In fact, I remember when I stood up in the theater after it ended, I was like, whew. I was like, whoa. I was kind of blown away. I was emotionally exhausted because the film, and we'll get into it, once it gets a hold of you, it just doesn't stop. There's no real pauses or moments of relief. It's a constant.
Yes, the film is technically the film is a Kammerspiel or a chamber film. It all takes place locally, and it's in or around a single environment in order to hyper focus on the psychology of the characters involved. It's also a terror movie. There's a difference between horror and terror. Horror is the revulsion you feel after an event. Terror is characterized by anxiety and anticipation. And so this is very much a terror film. There are elements of horror, but it is a chamber film and it is a terror film, and it is so incredibly effective at what it does.
Well, and Bacon, just to add one detail onto that comment on the terror film side, this film does something that most war films what most war films do not do, which is you see like a close-up of a guy and he turns and you're like, he's going to get blown away. And then he doesn't.
Yep. Sometimes they don't. Right. Yeah.
Right. And that's the slow build of the tension. And I think we got like 4, maybe 3 shows of force throughout the film, which kind of served as tension breaks, but not really. They kind of layered the mounting tension as it happened, because you knew that even though there was a reprieve, because the jet flies over, there's a huge sonic boom, and there's a little bit of retreat from the streets that happens after that, you know that is not the end to the event.
Right.
It's not going to be over until they leave.
Yeah.
Right. It buys you
minutes,
a few moments, a handful of moments in which to collect yourself. The problem is you are also affected by these jets passing. So real quick, a show of force, which I had never heard of until I'd seen this movie. A show of force is called in by ground troops, in this case, Navy SEALs. They call it in, and what it is, it's a jet, a fighter jet. I think Titterpig noticed it was an F-15 on the last show of force. What was it for the first 2?
FA-18 Hornet, Super Hornet.
Okay, the Super Hornet. It'll come in maybe 20 feet, 25 feet above the ground, pretty low, maybe higher than that, because that's
just
really
a full afterburner.
And full afterburner, and it comes right down the street, right above your head at Mach 1 or over. So you'll see the jet pass by the camera, and then you'll have a half second of absolutely nothing, and then almost an explosive wake of speed and sound that blows over the camera and whoever's on that street. And it is an impressive show of force. It impressed me. It impressed everyone in that audience. It's very dramatic. They did this. And so the first time you're like, whoa, that was cool. By the second and third time, you're like, dude, collect yourself, man. You got about 10 seconds before, this will start. So it became, like Bacon said, a moment of very short-lived relief, but also relief nonetheless, which was a luxury in this battle.
But I had never heard that called a show of force. When I had heard show of force, I understand show of force on like a strategic level. Like what does it mean?
Oh, right.
So
Yeah, this is
was
tactical
show of
show of force.
on a very tactical level that they were calling this in.
Yeah, using the speed of the jet to weaponize it.
Using power. Doug and I were talking about this with my brother after we saw it the third time. He and I a third time. My brother's first, and Doug's elder boy too. The engines on those jets are so powerful that they are in essence weapons themselves. You can if you put anything behind a turbofan or turboprop or a turbofan jet engine like that, while it's at full thrust, you can be walking behind the thing at half a football field away, and it will destroy whatever gets behind it. So this is not just an impressive sound and fury type of a thing. There's actual destructive potential by doing that. And the reason they were doing it, they said, is because the enemy was so close in on top of their own friendly troops, they couldn't risk weapons deployment. Right?
Well, they were everywhere. They were on the roofs. They were absolutely everywhere. And there was they couldn't
wherever they are to scare them away. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's urban warfare, which means infinite hiding places. Hiding places in 3 dimensions. They could be on the ground by the gutter. They could be on the roof. They could be 360. So it's very difficult. And you get this sense while watching the film, how difficult it is to track where you're receiving fire, and 2, how to return fire effectively. You could see a guy and pop up and shoot and empty a clip and just hit nothing, and it's frustrating. And you get a sense of the sort of layered levels of unbroken frustration and unresolved firefights. They're not resolved. They're not ever really resolved. They're just constantly going. And hard. They're rarely
actually shooting at anything. Most of the gunfire is just
very rarely see anything hit. Yeah.
Exactly.
Did you have a historical overview, Doug? And then I want to talk about
So I heard it was a modern war film. I was like, oh, cool. This is modern war. And so I was taken off guard when the film opens up and it says Ramadi, Iraq, 2006, which is a modern war, but already dated by today's standards. The drone warfare was in its complete infancy. I remember seeing magazine photos of an American troop in Iraq picking this thing up, throwing it up in the air, and then navigating this like real simple drone. It's like, oh wow. Well, now drones have like taken over these battlefields. So this is before all that. So in 2006, this was this was part of the War on Terror. In September 11th, we invaded Afghanistan. By 2003, February of 2003, or February or March, we invaded Iraq. And, there was not much resistance with us coming into Iraq. I remember the dramatic footage on the news. You had all these embedded journalists with tank battalions wearing Kevlar vests and helmets. Like, they're on the tank. And they're like, we're with the tank. We're crossing over the Iraq border right now. It was really intense. And then there was a brief moment of quiet. I don't know if you remember, but they disbanded Coalition Provisional Authority Order Number 1, the disbandment of the Ba'ath Army, the Ba'athist Army in Iraq, which was, in retrospect, considered an egregious mistake because the entire armed forces took off their uniforms, disbanded, and melted into the public to absolutely start an insurgency all throughout Iraq. And I read a lot of books on this at the time as well. I was very heavily invested in understanding this. There were forces from Iran assisting. A lot of the soldiers were on adrenaline, so they would inject themselves with adrenaline. You could hit these guys, and they would get hit and continue to fight almost like superhuman warfighting capacity because of the adrenaline shots and everything that they were on. So in 2004, by 2004, the Al-Anbar province, which is where this story takes place, became a hotbed of the insurgency. The Al-Anbar province, and it was mean insurgency stuff. We had never really seen it. It was kind of new to the American warfighting experience in the modern age. And in 2004, they invaded Ramadi, a large city in the Al-Anbar province. And it was small forces early on. The United States about 1,800 troops entered Ramadi, and they fought against roughly 1,000 insurgents. And this got superheated. And the United States failed to really take control over this city, and the insurgency spread, and it got worse. And Ramadi was considered, alongside Fallujah. I don't know if anyone remembers Fallujah. That city was destroyed, annihilated. It was heavily manned by insurgents, and the United States came. They surrounded the city. I remember seeing like Time magazine with graphics and aerial footage and maps. Surrounded the city and step by step destroyed it, leveled the city.
My brother's best, and we talked a little bit about this after we all saw it together. One of my brother's best friends is a Marine, ex-Marine, and he signed up just after. Yeah, former Marine.
Never
yeah, he's true. Yes, a veteran Marine. And he signed up right after 9/11, and he was in the first wave into Fallujah and was there for the entire campaign on Fallujah, both of them actually, because we went through Fallujah once and was like, okay, it's secure, and started to leave, and oh, guess what? No, it's not. So we had to come back, which is the same thing we did. This is actually the second Battle of Ramadi in this film, by the way, for the same reason. But yeah, he was saying how. It was so dangerous. They had to go house by house the first time through. Yep. And then as soon as they cleared a house and left to go clear more houses, insurgents just came back in behind and occupied the house again, and they could never secure their rear. Well, so by the end of it, they were just
trouble stopping the resupplies that were being smuggled into the city. That's why they had to cordon it off. There's no city wall, there's no way to keep people from sneaking in. So he says by the end of it, what they were doing in order to quote unquote clear a building, they'd take a block of C4, wrap it in det cord, and just chuck the whole thing in there. Boom, level the house and go on to the next one. Do the same thing. Boom, hand to hand combat, quote unquote, except that their hand to hand was just chucking explosives into the buildings, leveling them, and then clearing out whatever came out. So and this was rather horrifying because I don't think we had seen that. I mean, really since World War II? Modern, modern day cities being leveled by conventional weapons, So to gut out an insurgency like this in pure urban warfare. And so when Ramadi, when the center of gravity kind of moved to Ramadi, the Americans started to cordon off that city too, and there was real concerns like, whoa, are we going to just wipe out city by city? These are major cities in Iraq. So the United States attempted a different tactic with Ramadi. They did not want a Fallujah-style razing of the city, and the general in charge there was like, look, we're going to try to handle this with a little bit more patience. And so they although it was not a successful campaign in 2004, they returned to Ramadi in 2006. They promised the population of about 500 to 400,000 people at that time, we're not going to destroy the city like we did with Fallujah. We're going to try to do this by the book. So they cordoned off the city immediately to prevent the resupplies, and then this was just going to be a slow, methodical city block by city block taking of this city. So this film takes place under those conditions in which it tells you in the beginning of the film, the people you're following, the soldiers, are Navy SEALs, and all they tell you in support of a Marine operation. That's all they tell you. It's a Navy SEAL platoon in support of a Marine operation. They're on some kind of an overwatch. They're looking, they're using sniper cover, really using the scope to spy on this market area, to observe men of military age men, or MAMs, and their movements. That's all that they were doing.
I think they also told you that it was reconstructed from memory as best as possible.
Yes,
right.
We can get into that later too.
It was even worded almost like a memorial. Like, this is based on their memories.
Yes,
of the soldiers who fought. So, and by the way, this film is very soldier positive. You could tell there's a lot of love for the soldiers. I do know that the co-director of the film was Raymond Mendoza, who himself was a Navy SEAL.
Well, it's not that he was a Navy SEAL; it's that he was a member of this particular group. Mendoza, the radio operator. That was the director of the film, or co-writer.
Right. So the director. So this is unique, and this is the director was part of this operation, and then also one of the main characters who this is about is public about this. Well, right. So we have yes.
So that's what's going on. You have a very intense insurgency in Ramadi. This is post-Fallujah. This is the United States forces trying to clear a city of insurgencies without destroying the city. So they were willing to engage with these very dangerous close-quarter combat scenarios in order to get it done with minimal civilian casualties. So that is essentially what's going on. The film also shows that they would take over an apartment where Iraqis live there. You know, there's a family there, and they're like, "Hey, we're here now. This is now a military outpost." Sorry, I think they did show that the Americans tried to be humane to this family. They also they portrayed the family, I would say, in a neutral way, which made you sympathize with the Iraqi family. So the film itself was not sensationalized. It was very authentic. It felt that way to me.
I agree.
Then let's discuss. Then why is this called Warfare? Like the movie's title is Warfare. I think it's pretty good because if you titled a movie Warfare, I mean, you could title that movie that title about many different time periods. And if it were current, I mean, warfare. This is Alexander, and the Macedonia's conquest of any number of things, or Rome, or the 100 Years War, or the Norman conquests of
cyber warfare.
I mean, there's a lot of things that you say is warfare. It's weird to say this is not completely current because it's 2006, but it's pretty current. Okay, this is just warfare. And, because there isn't a lot of context given about this operation. There's a little bit, like I said, support of a Marine operation. And this is what happens. So it's not, the Battle of Ramadi or whatever. It's just, okay, this is what this is about in a somewhat current context. Right.
And what's interesting is, from a tactical perspective, there's so much inconsequential aspects to these exchanges. From a tactical standpoint, this building was chosen because it had a good view of the market where the American soldiers from very far away could keep an eye on potential insurgency movements. And yet once the battle takes place and you see it's rather inconsequential. Didn't you guys feel that way? Like,
yeah,
that
there's not only is there no actual real tactical objectives for them to secure, they were only there to support an operation that by the time everything kicks off in the film, the radio messages have told you, all right, we've completed the operation, so now we're moving stuff around and getting ready to exfil. And so everything that happens is kind of like just an obstacle to everybody leaving. The whole point of the film is for them to leave.
Just a withdrawal. Well, and by the way, I noticed by the third time I saw it, it wasn't even necessarily a full-scale withdrawal. It was kind of like, we need to extract this one guy out, and then we might as well extract the rest of the team. There was almost
the first time I was like, why didn't everybody just get on the Bradleys?
Yeah, they all went back into the building.
Go ahead and get out. Like, do you really need to be? Yeah, that's what I thought.
So I'll just say this and pass it off right away. But this film, Warfare, is different from every war film I've ever seen. And there's a number of reasons. I'll just say one and hand the torch because there's so many different things that made it different. I am a soundtrack guy. I love movies, soundtracks. I listen to them all the time.
I wanted to talk about the sound. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So now the film opens up, and I cannot get this song out of my head. It's almost like a haunting song at this point. It's called "Call on Me," and the film opens up with this music video that came out in 2004.
And it's the actual music video.
It's an actual music video by Eric Prides, and it's a Swedish musician. and it's this like this 80s aerobic thing, and it's these super hot chicks like doing all these like really sexual like dance moves, and there's like one dude who's like, and it's kind of a spin-off of that John Travolta, Jamie Lee Curtis movie from 1985. I forgot what it's called, but it's such a cheesy music video with this repetitive Call on Me, and it's like this like hip hops or this like techno song, and these soldiers are all bunched up, they're all watching it, and they're really getting into it, and it just captures something about that male camaraderie, and then it goes silent. That's about it for music until the credits roll. There's no soundtrack.
100%.
Yes, and there's a very good reason for that. It's because the entire rest of the film's sound engineering is designed to place you there as an audience member. It is there to be, you are supposed to be as confused as they are. You are supposed to be as rattled as they are. And I think that it achieves that in a very, it's a way that is not frequently achieved in other cinema. I think that the sound engineering in this film is absolutely spectacular. When you hear all of, like, when the IED first goes off and they've pulled everyone back into the building. First of all, the IED, you're rattled now. The terror has now you are horrified, but the terror has set in because you know they can't leave, and you are now anxious for what comes else. There's screaming, which makes you uncomfortable because
they don't try to stop it.
There is the radio chatter trying to get a hold of them. They're continuing to try and get a hold of him, and he just can't get his bearings. Everyone is talking or screaming. He has the ringing in his ears, and this is all at the same time being put upon the audience as well. And because there's a moment in that film where you think to yourself, at least there was for me, oh my God, make it stop. Oh my God, quiet down. I can't hear myself think. I can't pay attention. What is happening? And then he pulls his plug, and it gets silent-ish. But
I got
except for the screams.
Provide relief.
Oh man!
It's enough.
Third time through, I started getting real anxiety because they're playing. Level 1. There's about 4 or 5 guys on the walkie-talkie, all talking over each other, and the sound guy increases the volume. And then he unplugs it, and you're like, oh my God! I started feeling genuine anxiety and from just unable to think a thought. Because it's gibberish, it's just noise, and you need to settle down, and you can't.
Yes. There's only I don't know what I was going to say, but during this film, and this doesn't ever happen when I go and see a movie in the theaters. At that point, after he unplugged, I leaned forward in my chair, and I stayed leaned forward for the rest of the film. I was not reclining. I did not have my head against the back of the chair. And I have a theater with really nice, tall-backed chairs with headrests. I was leaning forward. I was paying attention. I was absolutely anxious, and it was a very unique experience in the theater. It was very unique.
And also with the sound, when the bullets first start, and we'll get into this, but the first 35 minutes is just nothing. Perfect. Nothing. Downtime. Boring. Tedium. Passing time. It's amazing that they chose to do this. But at some point, the fight starts, and the sound of the bullets, this high pitched clack, 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 clack. It didn't sound like gunfire.
No, that's actually how they sound.
Noise.
Exactly.
That's actually how they sound.
No. That's what I mean. Is my first thought was like, oh, what's that? Oh God, they're shooting at us.
Yup.
Because it was actual gunfire. It wasn't movie guns.
Yes.
And there was also after the AID blows up, the sound is so distorted. It's so distorted. And this one guy's trying to return fire, and there's this bizarre metallic sound to the gun going off, and I don't know. I was so disoriented just from the sound.
I really noticed that because I have tinnitus, and that guy, he was their saw gunner, the squad assault weapon, right? Yeah. He's got the big bipod mounted machine gun,
automatic weapon.
Yeah, and when he gets up and he started firing, and there's like. Yeah, it's like just this really bassy thump, but with this almost metallic clang at the top of it. And then it cuts away from him for a little bit, and then it cuts back to him as he's still backing into the house firing. And now the full sound register starting to come back, and there's this high ringing at the top every time he fires the gun, and I'm like, that's tinnitus, man. his ears are injured.
It was. This is going to sound weird. It was almost a pleasant metallic sound. It was like this cling, 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 cling. It was really high pitched. It didn't sound like a gun. It was like mesmerizing in a weird, because you're disoriented, and then there's this, like, for some reason I found it to be like dream-like pleasing, like, because you're out of it, you're completely disoriented.
Well, I mean, everybody who was near the Bradley when it got hit with the RPG was concussed.
Yeah. Oh, there's concussion. There's confusion,
and a couple of them were really badly, actual TBIs. But everybody there, at least, was shocked, stunned from the concussive force. So
every time
they did a really, really good job of implying, or not implying, of transmitting the just severe disorientation from being near that kind of a shock, that and the time it takes to recollect yourself and start putting the world back together around you piece by piece, kind of.
In that moment, that's where I'm going to use the word breakdown, but it's not, I'm not using it singularly. There is a breakdown of duty. There is a breakdown of discipline. There is a breakdown of masculinity. There is a breakdown of sense. The world doesn't make sense anymore. There is an entire reality breakdown that takes place in that moment. And then what we witness is the psychology of the result of that sort of thing happening.
Right. The first guy that goes down, I remember so in this movie, if a grenade goes off, the smoke stays on screen for 15 to 20 minutes. Like it's that kind of a movie. It's not like one incident. Like the grenade's there, the effects of the concussion persist, the smoke stays there. It's a problem for 15 to 20 minutes in the film just because one grenade goes off. So when the IED goes off and you have this mass, beige cloud, the sound distortion. At one point, I remember getting a sense of, are you just a guy on a street? Where's the platoon? Like, are you part of a fighting force? Are you part of anything right now, or are you by yourself? I remember feeling a little of what would be a panic. Like, am I still with my platoon? Is there anyone around me? Who's that coming out of the smoke? What am I? Am I a prisoner? Like, am I hurt? Like extreme loss of what Bacon's talking about, a sense of the reality that I had command of 2 seconds ago. I don't have any of it anymore. That
reality does not exist anymore.
Right.
And another thing that adds to that, I think, at least as an audience viewer, of course you're a viewer in the audience. I didn't need to say that. Anyway, as an audience member, the film has a runtime of 95 minutes. It's real time. This is what they experienced in 95 minutes.
Yeah, there's only two. There's only two cuts.
There's two cuts.
Significantly
impacts the audience's involvement in the film, because you have now spent watching in a theater the same kind of absolute complete breakdown of reality that these men did for the same amount of time. Now you're removed from it. You're safe, but the anxiety you're feeling is real, right? And it's an impressive feat to be able to achieve that with a film. I am unsurprised that it took a war film to get that involvement from an audience. I am unsurprised that it was a war film.
The theaters I was at were relatively full, and there was strong reactions, gasps. No one was chit-chatting. I mean, people were focused on the screen like a prey focuses on a predator passing by. It was like primal focus on the film.
And going back to what started this whole thing, the sound design better get a Academy Award, I would think.
It will,
because the sound design is like, I mean, even in the whatever it is, 20 minutes or whatever leading up to 30 minutes leading up to before the actual combat kicks off, they're all just kind of sitting there, and then dogs start barking in the distance and everybody
yeah.
looks up, and that's like nothing happens except that your blood pressure goes up,
Yeah.
right?
And now that they actually have to watch the nominees, I would hope that this
Right?
actually does get a nomination.
Well, watch out for Wicked, guys.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
But
what is the quote that war is boredom followed by terror? Why can't I find?
Oh
this
yeah,
exact-
it's war is 90% boredom followed by 10% sheer terror.
Right. Yes, that's exactly what. That's what this movie was trying to show you.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the
that's why it
balls to
started
do
off
it.
with this. Yes. And I was looking for a quote from somebody in the comments, and I can't find it right now. But that's all right. Mike says, without the tedium and downtime bit, the hectic and disorienting pace of the rest of the movie might not have had the same effect.
Yes,
that's what they were doing.
100%.
So first,
Yes.
they showed
1000%.
you the boredom. Right. That's it. First, they show you
And
the boredom.
that's
what's
to
going
mount the
happen.
tension. That's to build.
Then they're going to
tension
show
because-
you the terror in real time. Right. Yes.
So now,
exactly.
Yes.
if this was a $200 million budget, I think the studio would never let them film downtime for 35 minutes.
See,
They had the balls to say, hey, we're not going to do anything. It was like Seinfeld. This is a show about nothing. They're like, we're going to do nothing for 35 minutes. And they did it. They had the balls to do this. And the impact it had was so incredible that I'm part of me is grateful from a filmmaking standpoint that they had the courage to show that kind of tedium for that long on screen.
Heath and I talked about. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Heath.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Bacon. Then I'll.
I just want to say that you and I talked about previously the types of films. There was the era of the star and the era of the director, and you and I discussed us kind of entering into the era of the studio. This is an A24 film, right? And so
Yes.
I am
true.
If anyone's going to let anyone do this kind of movie, it's going to be them, right?
Yeah.
It's a terror film, and they are well known for their horror. It's a chamber film. They are well known for their chamber films, and they are also well known for thankfully allowing writers and directors to achieve their vision. And that's what was done here.
And A24 is getting such a good reputation, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I know they have a fantastic reputation, and I would love to know more about how this is financed, because this was only $20 million. I mean, this is not a big budget film. This is a small budget film. And my point was, maybe this is a good time to bring it up, this is not structured the way any type of Hollywood film is. We've talked a lot about story structure on this channel, and we've talked about what's supposed to happen. What's supposed to happen in a war film, things don't happen. In fact, this is more like, hey, what you might approach a studio to say that you want to make, that they're not going to let you. For a million reasons that we talk about for story structure reasons. You're like, I'm just going to show what actually happened as best as we can, reconstruct from people's memory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not going to produce a conventionally structured story.
No, life is messy, man. Yeah.
And so, right. So I think what you were just saying, Bacon, is if somebody came forward, hey, we're going to do a $20 million film. $200 million film. This was the $20 million film, whatever. You wouldn't get this
correct
from it.
Yes.
You would not get this from it because
Completely agree.
Be looking for more of the conventional structure. And, I compare this movie a lot to Black Hawk Down. And Black Hawk Down is one of my favorite movies of all time. Not only a war movie, but I mean, we've talked about it on this channel.
Yep.
I think that Black Hawk Down still kind of surpasses this one for certain reasons, and because as far as the intensity and what I was holding on to, but it's extremely similar. It's extremely similar.
Mm-hmm.
I think Black Hawk Down pushes it a bit further, but you wouldn't get to do this. You would not have gotten to make this movie if you had to get $250 million worth of funding, because they wouldn't have funded the script, I think.
Right.
I
agree with you.
Yeah, there's no way. But at the same, also too, it's a bit to this film's advantage, in my opinion, because
yes,
as good as Black Hawk Down is, and it's excellent.
Mm-hmm.
It's also subject to the needs of dramatization, insofar as they combine multiple characters in some cases into a single role. They change the order. They change the order of events to make it more dramatically appropriate, and they they make certain things happen a little bit differently than they did in the actual I actually
read the book by
operation in
Mark
Somalia, right? So like the run they have at the end back to the football stadium didn't play out that way, for example, but they did it that way to kind of give the dramatic resolution of the film and what have you. So this film, there's none of that. It is by design, and in I think the advantage to a small budget that prevents it from being anything else. But it is by design to be as close to what these men actually experienced within that period of time as it can possibly be on film.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that's a fantastic concept. Just like Heath is saying, never would have gotten made with a big budget.
Yeah,
but
it's an immersive lesson in reality.
Let me say this about the small budget. In 2023, my favorite movie of the year was Godzilla -1.
No, I agree with that.
Best movie of the year.
It was the best movie of the year for sure.
And it had like a $10 million budget. And dude, that movie, I got emotional several times for those Japanese soldiers. The way, man, incredible film. And it had nothing of a budget. Last year, 2024, I said the favorite thing that I watched was Shogun, which was a TV show. And then there was Strange Darling, Nosferatu, Fall Guy, The Substance. These are all low-budget films.
Yeah.
And now
they are.
Warfare stands a great chance of being my favorite film of the year, or at least top 3. So these low-budget films are the ones.
Nosferatu was last year, so we get to say that.
Yeah, Nosferatu was last year, and we none of us have seen Sinners yet. So that's probably
I've heard really good things, but even if Sinners ends up being, let's say, my favorite, this is going to be right behind it. My point is that these low-budget films are getting the job done, and so I do think you said the age of the studio, Bacon. It really might be shifting to the age of the low-budget blockbuster. At least I hope so.
But I hope that, like we were talking about, this one didn't have that long a theater run. We were talking about that it has maybe been extended or something like that, because like I didn't know about this one because of any type of advertising. I only knew about it because of the word of mouth from you, Doug, and Sable, Titter Pig Rancher, telling me to go see it. That's what got me out there. And now I wanted to go, and now I wanted to take my father and brother to go see it. I was like, but if it's gonna be out of the theaters on Thursday, we're not gonna have time. It looks like it's been extended at this moment, which is good, because in order to have legs, I mean, it's kind of old school. In order to, you can't do a 2-week theater run and have word of mouth advertising do something for you, because that's not enough time for word of mouth to get out. You need the tertiary people. You need the people to go and see it who happen to be connected with it, to tell somebody else to go and see it. And then you're not really getting something until the next layer tells another people. And if it's 2 weeks, you're not gonna be able to do it. So I'm really,
and it had a limited release. It was only at 2,600 theaters, which is a very limited release. And, there's no marketing.
But at this point, as it stands, it's already beat out Hurt Locker for domestic war films.
Really?
It's already beat it out. At the box office. So it's already beat it out.
It's been a long time since I've seen that one.
This one is going. Hurt Locker really faded into the distance. This one is going to. This one's going to have some staying power. I think there's things in this film that are going to elevate it to some of to live amongst some of the best war films, if not top war films of all time. Bacon, you said the noise. I remember there was once talk about like Hollywood versus like real, this film. There was a scene where there's a guy screaming. He gets injured severely and he's screaming. He's just yelling. And all I could think of was the movie Platoon, where Todd Berenger, Sergeant Barnes, gets on top. He's like, "Shut up and take the pain. Take it." And he's yelling at him. And the guy's like, And I was waiting for that moment. I was like, "Where's Sergeant Barnes to tell this guy to shut up?" Doesn't happen. In fact,
they subvert it.
They subvert it big time. A guy comes
Cosmo
in,
wakes up and starts to yell.
There's a guy. They're relieved.
Which is the actor's name, not the character's name. I can't remember the character's name.
Right.
Elliot.
So
Elliot.
Oh, that's it. Elliot. That's it. Elliot.
Oh, and by the way, do you know that Elliot is the actor from Shogun, the lead actor, Blackthorne? From Shogun. The main English guy in Shogun. That's Cosmo Jarvis. That's Elliot.
Also, the other guy who gets second, however you want to put it, the guy who also gets both of his legs destroyed but doesn't go unconscious, that's the actor who played Eddie from Stranger Things.
That's Joseph
Season
Quinn,
3.
who plays Eddie Munson from Stranger Things. He
Yeah.
looks like Robert Downey Jr. in some scenes, you know.
Right?
You know, but yeah, you just don't get the sort of movie moments that you expect.
But they also subvert it because you're gonna get to it. Yeah, I'll let you go.
Well, back to the noise comment that I think that you were going to make, Doug, is that you would expect the noise, the pain, the exclamations of pain, the screaming, the struggling to go away or to dissipate or to be silenced at some point. Nope, you're getting twice as much now. And they were, and this, like, I get emotional thinking about it. Like, they screamed in the movie for as long as they screamed injured in real life.
Yeah,
that's a hell of a thing. That's a hell of a thing.
Every time they had to be moved, they start back up again because
that's a hell of a thing.
And so for the subversive element here, so as an audience member, you're like, someone needs to stop. I don't want to hear a guy screaming for 17 minutes, you know. I don't want to, or 8 minutes, whatever. You don't want to hear that. This movie doesn't give you the Sergeant Barnes moment to relieve you of this uncomfortable screaming that sounds like, dude, someone's going to hear you. You know, that's not the concern. You're inside of this concrete building, scream away. And secondly, they subvert it. There's a macho moment late in the film. They're given relief. And one of the soldiers like, all right, yo, this is what we're going to do. You know, let's bump up.
The Marine comes in.
Yeah, he ends up accidentally bumping the severely injured leg of the guy on the ground. And the guy's like, and he's clumsy about it. And it makes you go, and it was the first time, I've always enjoyed those, like, we're going to get it done moments in war films. This made you like, dude, like, no. Like, that's the wrong tone.
Yeah, this was not the time for this.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Dozer even says that.
A human reaction. And it was, I challenge anyone to watch this movie and not wince. Actually wince.
Totally.
All 3 times I've done it, even when I knew what was coming. But even that, with that kind of gung ho thing, like you were just saying, Doug, there's the one guy comes around, he's like getting ready to move him. He's like, shake it off, man. You're a frog, man. It's just a paper cut. And Dozer, Raymond Doza's character, he doesn't need this right now. It's like, cut it out, man. This macho crap is not gonna help.
Well, and as an audience member who has been sitting there with them, painstaking second after painstaking second, the jarring tone that this high testosterone moment had, which normally would be appealing to see. Yeah. Even the audience is so cute. You're like, dude, we're not there, man. Like, take it down a notch. We're in like steady as you go mode right now. Right. Yeah. And so it was weird because I was like, wow, I'm not on his side. Who would have thought that,
Yeah. Well, they've been hanging on by their fingernails for pure survival for the last 30 minutes,
Yeah. And that kind of energy, it just doesn't seem realistic or practical in that circumstance. It actually, like, you always assume there's like a secret reservoir of like power, strength, perseverance, energy. I'm gonna gear up mentally. I'm gonna gear up spirit. And I'm gonna do this. And this movie broke that illusion for me. That is not realistic.
Well, okay, let's talk about that, and this is something that a lot of people have spoken about, but let's take our take on it. That this is a SEAL here, and let's talk about the SEALs in our culture versus what is portrayed right here, and also how the SEALs are portrayed in different films. Because in this movie, the SEALs are not portrayed as super soldiers.
No. No, they are portrayed as competent without anything flashy ever really being done. So I have a friend of mine. He's one of the fathers on the baseball team, and he's an ex-Navy SEAL. And I reached out to him. And I was like, "Hey, have you seen Warfare?" And he's like, "Nah, these things, they're not realistic." So he is like checked out of the movie. So He's like, it's all BS. And I was like, no, man. And he never responded. So I was like, maybe it's not appropriate for me to be nudging an actual Navy SEAL like, hey, no, this is real. So it's up to him to see it. But I'm really, really curious to hear his take on it, because I feel like he, and maybe he would still say, nope, this is Hollywood. Maybe he would say that. But something tells me that he would at least have to concede that this was one of the best efforts to capture something of reality in this film. And like you said, they didn't hype the Navy SEALs in the film. They seemed like regular soldiers to me. They seemed highly competent. There was one scene that I absolutely loved, and it was so odd that this was the scene. It showed the U.S. I think they were the Marines in this case. It was an aerial view, so it's a black and white shot from the sky, from air support, looking down to where everything's black and white, and you can identify the soldiers and the insurgents as big white silhouettes from an aerial view moving around. You could see the insurgents all over the rooftops, and the thing locks on and is trying, and you see this column of U.S. Marines coming in, and the way they moved and separated and covered each other and moved down this corner and confronted insurgents as they went in, I felt so, grateful, observing their competent movement on that street. And while I was sitting there going, wow, these guys, they're moving quickly, they're moving efficiently, they are confronting insurgents, and then right when you're admiring, there's a cut, gunfire erupts, and you're with that exact Marine thing right on the street, and you're just like, oh God. Like, that's actually, you just never get that moment of relief.
that was actually the second element of SEAL Team 4 coming back to join up with them. The ones that had split off when they were first going into the buildings.
So those were SEALs.
Yeah, those were also SEAL. That was the second. Yeah, that was SEAL Team. That was SEAL Team 4 Bravo.
When we were we were looking for, or through the gunship's viewfinder, and like everything is sort of chaotic, and as an audience member, you're trying to get your bearings, and you're looking around, and you're trying to see what's going on, and then you see the single file come off from off screen, and they just kind of go immediately. It was like, oh, well, those are U.S. soldiers. You know exactly what they were, exactly what the plan was, exactly where they were headed. It even sort of kind of helped me get my bearings on the map. I knew kind of like, okay, we know where they're going. We know what streets they're crossing. We know what building we're going to. It made everything so much more clear. And I think that is, intended or not, impeccable subtext. Because when the U.S. soldiers arrived on the scene, things became more clear. Now, again, I say this as a patriotic American, but this was an American film made for Americans. So,
I think you touch on something very.
The Iraqis, though, they were just the bad guys in the sense that that's who we're fighting. They didn't show them like doing anything, or they didn't take time out of their day to make you go, oh, I don't like that guy.
Right. They weren't villains. They were people.
Right.
They were not villains.
They were people. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it was very neutral in that sense, in my opinion.
I agree.
I also want to expand on something that you reminded me of about how it felt when the second element of the SEAL team came back and joined up. It's like, because we've spent this entire time with SEAL Team 4 Alpha, and everybody's jacked up, injured in some way, shell shocked, out of it, kind of freaking out, not quite on their game, no idea how to get out. And then Dozer's character looks up through his as he's coming out of another fade out from his concussion, and blearily sees the U.S. soldiers walking through the front door.
Oh yeah, there's three
and
of them.
They feel it's such a relief. The heroes are here to save us, right? It's such a relief. I thought that was a very interesting. It's like these are guys who just, less than 24 hours earlier, we were all hooping and hollering watching this cheesy 80s styled music video. And
that's part of the guy camaraderie.
But now they're like, they're our saviors. It's really was an interesting.
Well, and that's why when these guys come back to home, there's nothing to replace those experiences.
Right.
It's such an elevated distress, camaraderie, that going to a football game to grab a beer. I mean, there's just I could see why these guys go back. I could see why they might go back. Because that's the thing that makes sense now. That's the thing that makes sense. And this seems very nerfy, and by contrast, And I wanted to point out too, and Sable and I talked about, or Titter Pig Rancher and I talked about this. One other thing that makes this film incredibly distinctive and amazing. There are 2 deaths in the entire film. In a war film, the American soldiers are severely wounded, a couple of them, but there are no deaths of an American soldier. There is, there's 3 deaths. There's one guy who dies from the IED, an Iraqi
One of the Iraqi
soldier.
scouts. Yeah.
One of the Iraqi.
I would call him an American soldier.
Okay.
Personally, I
Well,
would
what I'm
call
saying
him
is
an
there are
American
2 deaths from the gunfire exchanges that are going on for an extended length of time. There's one shot from the infrared aerial where I was saying you can see
that is one.
And you see someone killed.
You could see the SEAL guy turn and open fire on another white silhouette who goes down and doesn't move. You're like, presumably dead. And then near the end of the movie, there's one shot where they go out and they're on the street, and there's one Iraqi that's outside of an alleyway, and he shoots, and the guy gets hit, and it looks like in the leg even, but he gets hit, and he goes and he falls back into the alley, and that's it. So despite billions of rounds fired, there are 2 on-screen deaths, one observed from an infrared aerial camera, one street-level guy goes down out of all of this. War films usually show guys going down left and right, like, hey, this is the reality,
Yep.
This didn't do that, and it made it somehow worse. It made it more realistic to me.
It ratcheted up the anxiety and the tension because you were expecting it. Oh my God, when it's not now. Oh, only one guy died. I agree. It's such a well realized, audience immersive film.
It's because it's not dramatized, though, right?
Yes, I agree.
It's not dramatized, and it's not glorified, and it's not romanticized. There is nothing nothing about it attempts to heighten the emotion of the situation, which just makes it that much more emotional.
Correct. Yes. Not even character development, which as a writer, I'm a big fan of character development. I appreciated they omitted that. And they did the one thing that writers dream of doing, but you never quite can do it, which is absolutely strip out any other context except for the actions and the words and actions of the characters are all you get in this. And so, like, for example, there's a scene where there's a guy hit and he's on the street and he's laying there. And so in a typical war film, you see the guy run, cover me, and he runs out, he drags the guy back. He's by himself and he's thinking, should I get that guy? And he hesitates. And then he finally decides he's going to go out there. He turns, he grabs the guy, goes to run, and the guy's a little too heavy for him. So now you're on the street, and you're like, oh, man, now you're stuck. You got to bring this guy. So it made the small acts of heroism less sensationalized and more practical. Like, dude, get the guy off the street, get back, and get it done. There's no character development, no high fives, no dialogue back and forth, just shit, I don't know if I want to do this. Okay, I'm going to do it. Oh, man, now I'm stuck out here. Now I got to get this guy back. And you're just stuck in this terrible moment saving this guy. Mm-hmm. So how the soldiers acted and responded to varying degrees is all you got. And you can infer their personalities to small degrees. And actually, none of that even mattered. It's what they could do that mattered. That's almost all that mattered.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will take a slight issue with something saying there's no character development at all, because I think that's part of the reason that spending so much downtime, so much of the quote unquote boring time before the actual firefights start was so important. You could see, for example, the actor who played Eddie from Stranger Things. You could see what his character did. He's doing push-ups. He's cleaning the dust off the side of the bed bed rail. He's doing these kinds of things, or the little interactions, like when the one SEAL, the drone telemetry guy, takes a drink and offers it to his partner, and then spits part of the water back into it and hands it over. Or when Elliot gets up for a stretch and he starts staring at Dozer for no reason, and they just stare at each other for like 30 seconds.
That's just like a little joke of the whole thing. He's been just sitting there on Overwatch this whole time, and he gets up and he just stares at this guy, and the guy's looking at him like, "What, bro?" It's just this
every time we've seen it. Every time I've seen it, people start laughing at that.
It's great.
Right? Yeah,
it's
but
so
there's
great.
Nothing like Saving Private Ryan, where you have to talk about, hey, let me tell you about the night before I joined the Navy.
Right. Yeah, no backstories.
Like, that's not there.
I think there's a difference between character moments and demonstrating the camaraderie in this unit and actual character development. And I think that's okay, because these are not characters. They are adaptations of real people. So I think
there's that.
I think that's true, because I heard somebody on YouTube talking about the character-driven part of this movie, and I was like, this is not a character-driven movie.
It's action-driven. The actions and decisions of the characters.
That you don't get that. Like, this is just the adaptation of what happened.
Yeah,
and it's not dramatized.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't get an assist from the director,
Yeah,
right.
That's. Do you mind me launching a little bit into how the film got made and the backstory of making it here?
Go ahead.
Do.
So, okay, the concept for this film, and I don't know if anybody here. I haven't seen it. I don't know if anybody here has seen the film that came out for. I don't remember if it was Netflix or Amazon recently, called Civil War.
I have not seen it.
I saw it.
I think in the very beginning, I was blurred between this movie and that movie, because so I have not seen Civil War, but
I haven't seen it either.
And it's also directed by Alex Garland.
Right.
Right.
So that's where, because that film ends with as I understand it, from what I've heard, I again haven't seen it. It ends with a battle in Washington D.C. And Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza, I guess, have been friends for a while, and so he brought Mendoza in to consult on how to run the combat filming, right? And so a lot of the tactics and stuff. I went and found a couple of clips after I watched Warfare for the second time. So a lot of the tactics and the procedures and stuff are done the same in that film, because they're like entering the White House and what have you, clearing rooms and all that kind of thing. So it's the urban combat, it's urban warfare. And as they were making, say what you will about Civil War, I've seen very, very mixed takes on it, which you would kind of expect given the subject matter. But regardless, it was praised for the tactical acumen of the battle scenes. So again, props to Ray Mendoza there, and for the sound design, which they did the same thing on that film as they did here, is to try and make the gunfire and the weaponry and all that sound real. Part of the way that Garland does that, by the way, the typical approach in Hollywood is to load your blanks with a half charge and then punch up the sound effects in post, right? But what Alex Garland does, and under Mendoza's direction and safety and all that kind of stuff, they load their guns with full charges. That's why they sound so realistic. And then they just let that sound. It's kind of like what's his name did with Heat.
Oh yeah,
I've still got to see that for that reason. I still got to see.
That's incredible.
There's a big gun battle at the end of Heat.
It sounds iconic. Real, man. The echoes and stuff.
But the reason why is because he had them load the guns with full charges, and so then when they got out there into the street and started letting them off, and it started bouncing around in the echoes between all those high rises, it makes it sound just like this like you're firing inside of a bowling alley or something. But anyway, as they were making Civil War, they got to talking about the kind about how Mendoza always wanted to portray what it was really like, and the kind of war movie that he always wanted to make, or that he always thought of being made, because this is the first time that Ray Mendoza directed anything for Warfare, actually.
Yep.
And Garland was right on board, and so they started putting this. Like, there are several ideas that Mendoza had, but they focused in on this one together during the filming of Civil War, and then they went and pitched this to A24 right afterwards. And like, hey, this is what we want to do. So then once they got it greenlit and everything, all of the actors they took and they put them through a 3-week mini SEAL boot camp, and treated them because Mendoza was like, these guys need to build the same kind of camaraderie that we had. Like, they have to be an actual unit, right? And so that when all the bad stuff goes down, you know that there's the guy beside you, and you know what he can do, and you can count on him, that kind of a thing. So they put him through this like 3-week mini SEAL boot camp, and they all did really bond, to the point where all of the actors in this film now share somewhere on their bodies a tattoo that says "Call on Me."
Really?
Oh.
They took the name of the music video. Yeah, they took the name of the music video and they tattooed it on there. And they started giving each other code names. That they literally did start calling the actor. I forget what his name is. He's got like 4 different names. Ofero Wunatai. There it is.
DeFaro, yeah.
Ofero. DeFaro Wunatai. They started calling him Dozer. The SAW guy, the squad automatic weapon gunner. They started calling him Babyface. Like, they started calling people these names that were just nicknames in the group, right? And they really did build up this squad level camaraderie, which once they got into filming, everybody
that paid off.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they say. Everybody says it made it so much more real. That they felt like they actually had been trained for this, that they were a unit. And so they set all this up, believe it or not, in a sound stage somewhere in Britain. I can't remember where.
I saw that. Yes.
Yeah, this is not filmed on location. It's all sound. Yeah, no, it's all a sound stage. Amazingly enough, I don't know how they got sunny weather in Britain, but they basically never left. Once they started filming, they basically never left that sound stage. So,
but because it's a location-based film, I can see that work.
Right.
They're like, okay,
yeah,
you could construct that sound stage to do this film inexpensively. I can completely see it now. You don't have to be running all across Europe like Band of Brothers or Saving Private Ryan. You're in a house.
Yeah.
So you can shoot a lot of this cheap. I'm sure that was a major part of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely was. They basically just built that entire street. So I just thought that was it's brand new, so I haven't been able to go back and dig up a whole lot of the backstory and the process of filming and stuff. But as you guys know from the other stuff we've talked about, once I find a movie that I like, I really like to dig into how it was made. And I thought it was interesting that they tried to make the actual pre-production and filming as close to an actual military operation as they possibly could, given the constraints of it being a film production, So,
well,
their devotion to realism and their devotion to transmitting that experience didn't just go to showing it to the audience, but to transmitting it to everybody who worked on the film for whatever role, especially the actors, the cast.
When the credits roll, there's a song that's played. Hold on, let me find out what that was. It's a pretty cool song too, actually.
The score, what there is of the score is very memorable.
Yeah, so there's that "Call on Me" song, which Titter Pitter, I forgot what you called it, but it's in-world music. It's actually
diegetic. Yes, it's all diegetic.
So yeah, it's not really soundtrack. It's music that's actually being played in the setting.
Yeah, and, it's something the characters are aware of and can react to.
Right. And the only other music in the rest of the movie is when the credits roll, and that is called "Dancing in Blood" by Low, L-O-W, and it's a pretty edgy song, and it's pretty cool. But my point was, they show a lot of footage during the rolling of the credits of actual SEALs showing the actors how to approach, and there was one little flurry of scenes where there's a guy, and he's just barehanded. And he's showing them, where you put. He's like, when you come out, you jump up, you do this, you do, and the way he was moving and how quick he was, I was like, that's a real soldier, man. Like, you just can't fake that. Like his instincts on he's like, you're not looking forward, you're looking up and over because that's where they're going to be, and then you cover that. Like, there's different zones, and he was showing it, but the fluidity of his movement just demonstrated such proficiency. And but
absolutely
that adds to the authenticity on screen.
And props to the cast for being able to nail that aesthetic. Like especially when they were entering the house at night, going down the street at night and entering the house at night and everything, man, they were just like water. Like, they obviously had drilled that a lot, and it showed. So
well, yeah,
they really devoted themselves. Like, I don't know how you judge acting for a role like this, but I would love to see people get some best actor and best supporting actor nods, just because they were obviously extremely devoted to the roles.
Yeah, this film, because of all these things, this film is going to have legs. I don't care what it does at the box office at this point. I think it's around 7. Now, another weird thing about this movie is they're about 6 days behind, or 4 days behind on reporting their box office numbers. I don't know why that is, but yeah, the last reporting was Sunday. We're on Thursday, and I don't know what it's doing. So as of Sunday, Warfare was at 17 million. It needs to roughly double that to make its budget back. But I don't really think that's going to be the issue. I think this is going to be the kind of movie that has long legs, that will become kind of a cult war film that people will refer to. You want to see a war film, watch Warfare. The other film, and that's not to take anything away from Platoon and Saving Private Ryan and Black Hawk Down, some of the greats. But this has its own brand that has done something new for film, which is and the genre of war film, which is saying a lot, in my opinion.
Yes.
Yeah. You want to be there? Watch Warfare.
Yeah.
That's a great tagline, man.
Oh man, that would be. That absolutely.
That's a great tagline.
Yeah. Well, remember how in Saving Private Ryan, there's that incredible opening footage, and there's the scene of Tom Hanks. He's kind of staggering onto the beach, and then you hear an explosion. You hear the ringing sound, and there's about 15 to 20 seconds of him kind of dazed and looking around. That's 15. That's Hollywood. That's the 15 seconds you get in Hollywood to give you an example. There is 40 minutes of this in this film. Every time I've seen it 3 times, and each time I saw it, I became more and more aware and sensitive to how concussions were portrayed in this film, and the presence of the men who are concussed from a grenade going off. They'll be in the middle of a task, and you don't even realize as the viewer, you're watching in the audience, and you're just watching this guy, and he's just drifting off. And then his he's supposed to be performing some sort of battlefield medicine surgery on this guy, and in the middle of this task, he just loses his focus and drifts off. And then someone else is like, "Hey, dude!" And you realize he's resting his head on the guy. And then even the wounded guy at one point, he's laying there and he goes, "Hey, what's he doing?" And he looks, and there's another soldier who's you see him in profile standing there, who's just staring at the ground. He's dazed out. Yeah. And then what was weird is "Hey, we need you." And then he snaps out of it and he moves on and he gets out. But the portrayal of concussions, traumatic brain injuries, the loss of it was very present in this film, and it made the 15 seconds in Saving Private Ryan look like a real nice thing to give the audience by comparison.
Yeah, I mean it takes him a good 2 minutes just to get off the street after the RPG hits the Bradley the first time around.
Oh yeah, they stay with it.
So
yeah, they stay with it. Just
wandering around, standing there, or shooting at nothing. Like it's just you don't just shake that off.
Yeah,
right.
And then,
I can hear a little echo.
I think it was a member from Bravo came up to the guy at the door and he said, "Hey, what happened here?" And his answer was, "I don't effing know, man." Then he asks him again, and he looks at him and goes, "I don't effing know." And that was it. That was the end of the conversation.
We just need to get out of here, is what he says after that.
Well, and Will Poulter, who's probably the biggest actor in the film, I appreciated his performance. He underplayed it, really. He didn't try to overact or anything. And I appreciated his portrayal of the character because he's like, "Dude, I'm messed up, dude. Like, you're going to have to take point." He realized that he couldn't form thoughts. He was having trouble making decisions. And he was kind of out of it. I didn't realize it until the third time I saw it. He's very present in the early part. Yep. And then suddenly he's just kind of incommunicado. He's just sitting off in this room. So when Bravo team comes in, he's like, "Dude, I'm messed up." And he knows it. He knows enough to say, "I'm combat ineffective," basically.
And that's a big deal because he realized he was combat ineffective prior to that moment. This is just his opportunity to gain relief. He knew that he still had to lead these men. He knew that he still had to, because he was the only one available, and it was a very harrowing sort of several minutes to watch him try and step up and try to perform, and then finally he got his relief. That was a huge moment in the theater, as I was watching it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going back to your other point, and I remember us. I don't know if you brought it up or I did the first time we saw it together. It's like, these are SEALs. These are legitimate badasses, right? These are the best in the world.
Totally.
They are special forces for a reason. But in going back to the whole thing of not romanticizing it, in the middle of all this chaos, they're still human. They can't just shrug. They can't just do the cool guys don't look at explosions, thing.
Yeah, there was no moment for the audience to be wowed in a way that made you go like, "Oh, whoa, dude, could you imagine?" This was just like wave after wave, layer after layer of just witnessing things and having to just kind of bury it down. You didn't even get a moment to really react to much. When the IED went off, it was like, people gasped and it was deadly silent. Mm-hmm. And like you said, they spend, 2 minutes, which in a film is eternity, of the guy just, there's a telephone pole, it's tilted. Where is everybody? It's so smoky. All I could see is the shell of the Bradley next to me. What's going on? And all you hear is like, real muted sound. And there's an Iraqi soldier, when he gets up, he looked like just watching him, he looked genuinely off balance. It didn't look like acting. I was like, he's gonna fall. Like he doesn't have his bearings here. So, they just made you deal with stuff. They weren't even trying to impress you. They were just giving it to you, and you had to sit there and take it as an audience member. But I was going to say, when I watch more movies, I do like being wild.
With the relationship of the SEAL in today's world, because it seems like the SEALs, I guess, because they were the ones who killed Osama bin Laden. I mean, especially after that, former Navy SEAL is like its own job occupation now. You get your own podcast, I mean, like if you're a former SEAL, I mean, you've got everything going for you because you're supposed to be this super soldier. I don't see movies and that kind of thing happening with like Delta Force. Now, of course, Delta Force was in
Black Hawk Down.
Black Hawk Down. But I think even at that time, like the White House didn't even acknowledge that there was a Delta Force.
Yeah.
I might be slightly off on my time, but I mean, that was something like that like, oh, there was Delta Force in that movie, but officially the government didn't even acknowledge there was something called Delta Force, and I haven't seen like Delta Force operators like out there having their own podcasts, doing, all the things.
That's true.
I don't see that. You know,
Delta Force is straight up Black Ops. I actually got trained on the base where they trained the Rangers and Delta Force. That's
Really?
where I got trained. You had
Really?
no idea who was who. You just didn't have any. Yeah, Benning. You had no idea.
Wow.
But for some reason, right? Yeah. Okay. So Mike says there's some controversy around the SEALs and their celebrity within the special operations community.
And
Really?
The SEALs are the celebrities. You get to come out of the SEALs. You get the podcast. Jocko Willink, you know, I guess, you know, is at the forefront of that, you know, and, you know, there's this phrase, which I do like, but, you know, the phrase that there is nothing more manly than Jocko. Right. You know,
gosh.
That, you know, so, you know, he's the former SEAL. You have all of that. And then you have this reputation of the SEALs as super soldiers, that the most ultimate thing you can possibly be in the United States is a SEAL. And they have this celebrity status, like Mike is talking about that. And then this, although, of course, it was about a SEAL platoon. So once again, here we are. It's also not playing into SEAL as super soldier.
Right. And actually the gallery of the photos of the actual people that they showed, a lot of them, most of them have their faces blurred.
Yep.
Right.
Part of that is because some of them are still active duty, so they're still classified. Their ID is still classified, but the vast majority of them are no longer in active duty. They just didn't want their faces to be known because it wasn't what they did it for.
And I
even
think,
if they could get in touch with some of them, they couldn't get in touch with. But for who knows why? But the majority of them, when they wanted to get their input and their permission, and everything, gave them the permission, but they didn't want their actual real life identity associated, you know, in lights, so to speak. So most of the guys in the SEALs are not, you know, glory seekers.
Well, right, but it doesn't have to be that most guys. Right, I didn't mean to imply that most guys are glory seekers. What I'm saying is that when we're talking about our, you know, the special operations today, the ones who are the celebrities are the SEAls.
Yes, exactly.
100%.
Yeah, like in the 70s, it was the Green Beret, right? They
Right. Well, yeah, no, there's Green Beret, and I was thinking about
80s.
Green Beret, and there's like the John Wayne movie, The Green Berets. But I was talking about there was that. But I'm like, when you're talking about a movie in the last 30 years or whatever, you're not celebrating the Green Berets. And I haven't seen, you know, there aren't like podcasts and everybody else about Green Berets. The only thing that I can think of with the Green Berets is that there is the YouTube channel, The Gray Bearded Green Beret, who talks about like equipment, you know, his personal equipment and everyday carry EDC equipment and stuff like that. And he's like, how do you survive in the so there is, you know, how do you survive in the wilderness or the forest or stuff like that. And I really do love his channel, the Gray Bearded Green Beret. But I mean, that's also, he's not like out there as a celebrity. He's just talking about like, hey, if you got to be out there in the woods, like, hey, this is what I would take. And, you know, and this kind of, that doesn't have the reputation of the SEALs in today's world. It's the SEALs that are.
I think Hollywood has romanticized. Yeah, Hollywood, you know, they romanticize the Green Berets. There's the John Wayne film, like you said, you know, the Green Beret. There's the song. All that has been replaced.
Yeah, but today, I'm talking about today, no one goes like, I got to be the Green Beret. Like,
no, I totally agree. I'm saying the Green Beret was the Navy SEAL in a different era.
Yeah,
they were
just like
what was that, 70s or 80s? Like when?
It would have been 60s, Korea, Vietnam.
70s.
Yeah, the Korea, Vietnam era. And then before that, in World War II, it was the Army Rangers, right? Because they were the ones who scaled the cliffs in Normandy.
It was
the Ranger. Well, I would say Marine.
The Green Beret
still is the Ranger.
I'm talking. I'm just talking about which particular quote unquote super soldier, if you will, which particular special operations group were kind of idolizing at the time in the broader culture, right? Like
I got what you meant.
It tends to change depending upon what those branches have done in the last, say, 30 years or whatever, and whether or not they've been involved in any active conflict. Well, and definitely modern day SEALs are that that thing for same
but
as.
I mean, certainly the Rangers have too. I mean,
Oh yeah, I mean, Audie Murphy
amazing.
Audie Murphy came back from World War II and started playing himself in movies. You know,
Right.
So yeah, there's always somebody that makes that allows the public to project this imagined, I don't know what you would call it, this mystique, if you will. We all want to have our romanticized warrior, whether it's a samurai or a gunslinger or a Green Beret or SEAL or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
like,
Hollywood has a big role in all of this, though. They're
Exactly.
the ones who kind of make the stories and films that promote these celebrity soldiers. Because Navy SEALs. Remember, there was that movie Navy SEALs with Charlie Sheen and Michael Biehn.
No.
And it was horribly inaccurate, but it really made them look like hot shot, soldiers. And then you saw they were in The Rock. And what were some of the other movies with Navy SEALs? I know there's some big ones out there. There's a bunch of movies of them, but the Delta Force were really made into like a big celebrity status following Black Hawk Down. But you're right, Heath. They didn't really follow up on that. There hasn't really been any movies that that glorify the Delta since Black Hawk Down, and maybe that's by design.
Or I was
Probably.
thinking about the CIA. The CIA has its own, like, that it recruits from different special operations, like the Special Activities Center, the Directorate of Special Operations. Like, you don't hear about them,
No.
on podcasts and the movies. And
That's
stuff
true.
Like that. So it has been, or even like the, when we're doing World War II, there seems to have been a deliberate. We've been going around to different types of units that have fought in World War II to give them their own movie or TV show, right? Band of Brothers.
I love Band of Brothers.
Oh yeah,
I love Band of Brothers too. There's the Pacific, Saving Private Ryan. What's his name? Did a tank movie in World War II
Fury.
Brad Pitt.
Fury, right? Fury, right.
Fury.
Yeah, Brad Pitt's Fury. Yes, exactly. And then the Masters of the Air, which I have not seen yet. But we haven't been going around to all the special operations.
That's true.
So this my point was that this one was kind of counterculture in the sense that it is a SEAL unit. Say, oh my God, we got to go see the SEALs. Right, a Special Activities Division. Right, thank you, Special Activities Division, with the CIA. But so we haven't been going around to the different special operations kinds of forces in the same way that we're going around to all the different kinds of branches in World War II. And so this one attracts people because this is a SEAL platoon, but it counters people's expectations in that you don't have like, the SEALs show up and they dominate. Right?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, they don't even really focus on that like in the trailer or anything. Like, it's not like, hey, by the way, these are SEALs. They give them that one line of context setup. A SEAL team was deployed in support of a Marine unit. It's so nondescript. So there's no real emphasis or like, hey, like you said, Navy SEALs are in this film. So they don't draw any special attention to it, and I think the film is more effective as a result.
Well, and the movie is called Warfare. It's not called Navy SEALs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which it could have been. If you were going in a different direction, that's how you would have probably pitched it. And that might have even been more commercially viable, come to think of it, in today's environment where like the SEALs are the celebrities.
I don't think that would have matched the tone of the film, though.
No,
Agreed.
definitely
Well, no,
not.
I don't think it would have matched the tone of the film, but I'm talking about like if you're trying to market it, especially if you have a larger
okay, I see,
budget.
yes.
Like,
I got you.
you can't call this movie Warfare.
Yeah.
This movie's gonna be called Navy SEALs,
Mhm.
and we gotta do other things with it,
Now that okay,
Right.
this
It wouldn't have been right for the title with what happened.
No, I think Warfare is a perfect title for this. Even at my first time I watched it, I was like, I don't know if Warfare is a best title. I think maybe the title Combat or something would have been better. But I think that actually this is a perfect title for it.
Well, I mean, I
Which-
guess it
which
could have been
kinda-
combat.
Well,
I mean, combat is-
still thinking in terms of like marketing. In terms of marketing, maybe it's not the best title, but it's the right title for the movie. I think
It is the right title for the movie for, I think, numerous reasons. And this ties into something too. If I can risk hijacking the conversation again briefly.
Go for it.
I wanted to get your guys' input on something that struck me about this film and discuss this a little bit. I've already mentioned it to Bacon and then to Doug after we watched it together. And not to bury the lead on it too much, but I'm curious. I'll start with, I want to get all your guys' input with what other kinds of things you've thought about it, and to pose this question to you first and new, Heath. What would you say the defining characteristics of the cyberpunk genre would be to you?
God, I hadn't really thought about that. Cyberpunk?
I know that it's kind of out of left field given our current discussion, but I'm just curious if you have anything
that is
that you could come up with.
I don't have great insight into that.
Okay, that's fair. I know that Bacon really enjoys the idea of high-tech low life.
High-tech low life.
I'm curious. I'm curious
High-tech
if you have any
low.
expansion. If you have any expansion or additions to that.
I mean, sure. Cyberpunk, you have to execute on both aspects of the title, right? So you have to execute on cyber, which is the high-tech component. You also have to execute on the punk component. And the way that it usually manifests as in the cyberpunk genre is a rebellion against a corporate overstructure that is usually running the government.
Right.
And it's, profits they're paid more attention, they're given more weight than the lives of individuals, consumerism at all-time highs. So like you have to make good on both of the components of
So
the
there's
title.
there's a definite economic, you're saying, and a sociological component.
I think there is definitely an economic and a sociological component. Yes, I think there is a philosophical component. And in watching this movie, you know what? I'll stop there because I don't know if that's the direction you're going.
Okay. No, but I mean, you answered the
Punk,
question, which is good. So go ahead, Doug.
Punk is like anti-establishment,
right?
Youthful,
Yes.
And also I think there's an element of pop culturism to a punk. They're not like a 60s hippie, right? They're edgy, they're dangerous, and there's something cultural, like pop culture about them. They're into music.
I would say counterculture. I would actually say counterculture.
Okay, counterculture, but there's a cultural aspect to them.
Yes,
that is an edgy cultural aspect, which is kind of unique to the punk. And then cyber, of course, refers to technology or computers. Cyberpunk is defined, let's see, on Google, a genre of science fiction set in a lawless subculture of an oppressive society dominated by computer technology, dystopian futuristic setting, low life conditions, high technology. That's
high tech, low life. Yep.
So, okay. I mean, this is all good. I just wanted to float this to you guys and get your input on this, because this happened after, and I remember texting Bacon about this. I think this happened the day before you and I went to see it the first time, Doug. I got up. I was going to bed. I got hit by a thought, so I popped up, and the next morning I messaged Bacon. I was like, "Dude, I think
you messaged me that night before you went to bed. I think it was so urgent that you actually messaged me before you went to sleep.
I think I did too, and then you responded the following morning. That was it.
Yeah.
Yes, I was like, dude, Bacon. I just got sidelined by a random thought, but I think Warfare could be arguably the perfect cyberpunk movie. and the reason why I didn't know why. Now that I've seen it 3 times and I've had an additional week to think about it, I think I've broken it down. Because to me, there are two underlying thematic backbones that support everything about cyberpunk. One is the commodification of the human body.
Yes.
And that is in your typical cyberpunk, it's basically the consumer is the product, right?
Yes.
But it can also be viewed as that the only value of the human is its contribution to the overall larger societal mechanisms. And then, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was going to cut you off because of how excited I am to share my answer to this, because I've been thinking about it since you asked me, but I didn't realize you weren't finished, so I apologize.
Not at all. The other, and I think the more relevant to, we can talk about the first one and how it relates to this film, because I think it does. But the second and more important in the context of warfare is the employment of power disparity to enhance that power disparity. In other words, using superior technology and finances to broaden the gulf between the people who can employ it and those who can't. Correct? You see what I mean? Typically, you have cyberpunk told from the side of the people who don't have the resources or the power or the position, and they're always going against the establishment. And that establishment always has superior technology, superior money, superior government control. They are the government most times, as well as the corporate structure. And they employ that to secure and enhance their position over those who don't have it. But if you think about that particular portrayal, you're watching from the top of the power curve in warfare. In other words, I thought of a simple kind of aesthetic exercise. Take everything about warfare, take the entire movie, don't change anything except two aesthetics about it. You change it so that the Navy SEALs are Arasaka PMC, and the Iraqis are, I don't know, nomads or one of the various street gangs, and you just set it in a neon noir setting, and that those are the only two things you change about it, and you'd have yourself a cyberpunk film.
I am going to be so frustratingly non-committal with my answer.
What?
So here's the thing: high tech, low life. Look, it's really easy when you ask me what is the essence of cyberpunk to just spit out something that Mike Pondsmith or Gibson or what's the guy that wrote Snowpiercer? Any number of cyberpunk authors or creators has sort of gotten out there as a really quick, zippy, peppy way to describe their type of story. It's a lot more deep than that, obviously. I frequently say that we are currently living in a cyberpunk dystopia. We have access to the sum total of human knowledge in the palms of our hands, and some people can't feed their families. I think there's no better description of high-tech low life. Now, is low life a requirement of cyberpunk? And the reason I ask that question is because I do not view this film as accurately communicating the low life aspect of a typical cyberpunk story. And I say that because these soldiers all value their own lives and the lives of their brothers extremely highly. Additionally, beyond that, we spend several seconds on the family after they evacuate, after they exfil. We spend some time with the family coming out of the bedroom. Everything is okay. you're okay. Really what they're saying is, we haven't been killed, we're out of danger. Everything is not okay.
Right.
And they spend time hanging on that family to illustrate to the audience that they know full well what they did because they had to, and they're still ashamed of having to do that. That's my interpretation and my viewing. So I think that isn't necessarily or isn't entirely evident of a low life tone to the film. However, this could have been just, if you take what's happening and set it in a high-rise city, you got a cyberpunk. You got a cyberpunk movie, right?
Yeah, and I think what's really, like, and Doug has talked about how this is one of his favorite scenes. What really drove it home was the overhead infrared shots from the Predator drone.
Oh, I love those shots.
Yeah.
I love those shots.
And it not only that, but the shows of force, like they're employing these fighter jets. The guys aren't flying them; they just call them. They appear, right?
Are you speaking? I think you're muted if you're speaking, unless you're intentionally muted. Maybe not.
Yeah, you're muted, Heath.
Can't hear you.
Oh, I am. Sorry. Go ahead.
There you go. No, I saw you speaking, and I if you said something, we didn't hear.
Yeah, we didn't mean to be talking over you. But I mean, they're rolling there with Bradleys. They're calling in fighter jets. It doesn't do anything to. Here's another part that really struck me is like the Bradley rolls up. They're going out to it. It gets hit by the RPG. Everybody's all jacked up, and then the Bradley just raises its ramp and trundles off, leaves them behind.
Yeah.
They don't.
Out. Right.
It nopes out. Exactly.
That's a Garland touch. Garland, I think he doesn't have a huge filmography to speak of, but I think that he does tend toward illustrating how the system, be it the government or some sort of corporatocracy, usually does value human life lower than maybe expectations would be. I kind of agree with Mike here in chat. He says he's not sure what makes this more of a cyberpunk candidate than other movies. I think that resetting the film to a modern city or a futuristic city, like I said, that's a major change.
But it wouldn't be. Again, I was saying that was just an aesthetic change, right? It would be in the slums somewhere. Like the big difference is that we're viewing it from the top of the power scale downward,
technology,
rather than from the bottom of the power scale viewing upward, right? But I thought that disparity was so huge, and I couldn't figure out why it struck me as a cyberpunk until I was able to process that and put it together. I mean, if you look at it, you look at the equipment and the raw resources, the amount of money that is being put behind this one SEAL team. Like an FA-18 is, I think, between $50 and $70 million. An F-15 Eagle is $90 million. A Predator drone is, I don't know what it was at about that time, but a Predator drone that they have flying over them the entire time is like $125 million or something like that. Or maybe that was a Global Hawk. Anyway, they all have all of this radio equipment. They all have this infrastructure backing them up. Those jets are coming from an air base or maybe a carrier somewhere. So there's that, a massive investment of resources. And they're fighting a bunch of guys with no uniforms using AKs and RPGs. AKs cost between like $900 and $1,200, and RPGs are $8,000 to $12,000. And that's, and grenades, whatever they cost. And all of these resources, all of this technology, all being brought to bear on this place, which would, by our standards, would be a slum, right? Like it's a major maybe in Iraq, but maybe everybody there could be considered well off. But in our from the amount of resources they have to leverage back, it doesn't even compare.
I don't know
And
if
it all
Cyberpunk cares about resources. I can go and legally buy for $150 a Flipper Zero, which is a device that allows me to absolutely ruin anyone's day who's using a Wi-Fi signal, to include their phone, their garage door opener, anything that's going on in their house that's wireless, their mouse. I can take control of their mouse and I can operate their computer remotely. So like, I don't know if Cyberpunk necessarily cares about resource expenditure as far as like, I mean, it could be an element, but I don't think it cares that much.
Well, I would actually kind of agree with you, and you might be coming at the similar point I'm trying to make from maybe a different direction, because with all of this that these guys have, they end up getting severely disrupted, severely damaged, pinned down, unable to act by people who have nothing in comparison to them, right? Like, is very much like the idea of rise against the machine, fight the man. You know, that's a kind of a core idea in Cyberpunk, and we get to see what it's like to be the man being fought against, and the people.
I'm not sold.
You know, in a way,
I'm not sold.
Okay, well, that's fair. It's just an interesting.
I told you I was going to be frustratingly non-committal. So,
well, there's a disparity in technology.
Yeah,
clearly, and you know, the American forces have, you know, pretty amazing technology to apply in a foreign country. But one thing I was just sitting here thinking about that really separates this from Cyberpunk, though, is in a lot of Cyberpunk, it's kind of like intercultural. You know, you have this, like Bacon said, countercultural movement. You're fighting against your own elites in some cases. This is really a different culture, different religion, different geopolitical area. It is an occupying force. It's not a homegrown force. So there are some major differences. But I think that the thing that makes it feel cyberpunk is that technological disparity, where you have control of the skies. You can watch movement from an infrared camera. You know, you have the ability to call in those shows of force. You have superior firepower, and you know, you could perform battlefield medicine right there on the spot. You could call in Bradley. So they have such an upper hand technology wise. It probably feels like, and by the way, cyberpunk is usually urban warfare. Yeah. So this has that element as well.
Yes.
But there are some of those big distinctions, and also cyberpunk is fictitious. This is based off a real thing.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say that. I was going to say
it's harder to want to lean into that if this is reality.
Yeah, even though I have said and will continue to say that we are currently living in a cyberpunk dystopia, I think that like Neuralink, like we have cybernetics, right? Like we are legitimately, you know, hell-bent on achieving a cyberpunk dystopia if we aren't already there. I would argue that we are. Even still, I just am not sold on this film being cyberpunk without making some major changes that would change the nature of the film irrevocably. Yeah. And I think the nature of this film is chamber film that explores the psyche of the characters involved in a very real way for a very real amount of time. I think that the point of the film is to expose the audience to that anxiety, to that discomfort. And I think it's very effective in doing that. I don't think that it paid any mind whatsoever to putting itself in a genre.
No,
I think that it succeeds.
I probably did not. Yeah.
Yeah. No, so I hesitate. I hesitate to call this film cyberpunk for all of those above reasons, and probably some additionals if I thought about it a little bit more.
I totally agree that it was not meant to be, and I don't actually mean to try and imply that it is a cyberpunk film either, just that it could make an excellent cyberpunk film for those elements that.
I think I understand what you're getting at. Is you take this film and you're like, what are these core elements? You could retell it in a cyberpunk.
Yeah. I get that.
Yeah. And it was interesting to me how it just hit me so strongly
I think it's a really interesting exercise to say, let's take this film and change as little as possible about it and see if we can get to cyberpunk or see if we can get to some other genre. Or I think that's a really, really, I think it's a fascinating exercise. I think that it's a really great, I think it's a really great thing that came to you for sure.
I do.
It's an interesting exploration into the level of technology we're at in warfare that we're even discussing it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but that also intrigued me. But I think that your point is very well taken, Doug, too, about how the cultural aspect and kind of the homegrown, with internecine nature of cyberpunk is definitely not here.
Yeah, there is kind of an intercultural angst, right? An angst against the culture there, in an aggressive, hostile, angry, emoting type of way, unlike hippies, which had this flowery, pacifist side. Cyberpunk is not pacifist, even though both are anti-establishment. The cyberpunk definitely has that hostility to it. But when I think of it, I do definitely think of them up against their own elites. There was a. Do you remember that? You guys might not. Do you remember there was a 4-part comic book series called "Give Me Liberty"? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? In the 90s, no. It was ultra consumerism, like ultra consumerism, and these people were having to fight against it. Anyway, it just popped in my head. But that was also culture, intercultural in that sense.
Yeah. I didn't want to. It was an interesting idea, I thought, and I to derail the conversation. I just wanted to know if you guys had any ideas on it as well.
No, I could see it from that infrared point of view too. How that would, like, if you just changed it all to neon and didn't tell anybody who they're fighting or where this was, it might immediately feel that way. But knowing it's Iraq, knowing it's American forces, knowing it's Iraqi insurgents, it's just harder for me to get away from it. But I see what you're saying on the technology side. Laying siege to essentially a mid-rise apartment complex like that. And even in the film, so little was accomplished. You see all this warfare for such a sustained time. Then the movie, then they finally extract, and you see all these guys just come out of the woodwork. It's like, man, all those guys are just sitting there. So
and kind of also just the expendability of the individual, like ultimately.
Well, remember they called it a jihad, an intifada. They announced it on a loudspeaker. So I would imagine culturally, you're not gonna be like, I'll sit this one out, guys. Like, you're going, like,
Well, what's the significance? This would be when you're talking about the expendability of human life. Okay, what's the significance of the hammer when they go out to get the hammer?
Oh yeah.
They have to recover their gear.
They have to recover their gear, and they're stepping over the guy's his leg.
Yeah.
Yes, there was a blown off leg at that moment. Yes.
Yeah, that was a very vivid image too. It's like,
Yeah, I think I would have left the sledgehammer. I don't think it would be worth taking a bullet for that thing.
So I've been reading about that, and it has something to do with do not leave any gear behind. No, do not leave any people, soldiers behind. Do not leave any person behind, but do not leave gear behind.
Yes.
So that sledgehammer has to be recovered, but that didn't necessarily apply to the Iraqi translator, whose leg is laying there that you're watching.
Well, he may have different
because he wasn't.
Well, he was.
Well, he wasn't
dead.
part. But I mean, if he had been an American soldier, they still would have grabbed his body to bring back. Yeah,
you're right.
He was not. He was embedded with them, but he was not like he was wearing Iraqi patches on his uniform. He was not a U.S. soldier. So that I thought that just there. Yes, there's the don't leave any man behind, but there was also a level of inhumanity in everything that was going on too.
We don't leave any sledgehammer behind, guys.
Yeah. So
we get rallied about that.
I mean, there was also
I think that plays.
And like I said, there was a breakdown of reality. There was a breakdown of duty. There was a breakdown of understanding. There was a breakdown of care, masculinity. So it was, I think that scene, stepping over the leg to retrieve the sledgehammer, I think was indicative of that. There was just a breakdown. The
Well,
concerns
and
that they should have had, they didn't have. Concerns that they maybe shouldn't have had, they did have.
Yeah, one of the books I read about, I think it was Fallujah. It may have been Ramadi, but they talked about how in modern warfare like this, there's layers of combat all unraveling at different paces all at once. And this was the first film I saw that really kind of captured that really well. It didn't ever feel linear. You know, it always felt asymmetric and always multilinear. Like you were always, there's the guys on the rooftop, and then there's the Iraqi interpreters. They don't want to guard downstairs. Then you realize, shit, no one's watching the roof anymore. You know, he's like, go up there. I was like, oh, no one's watching this. Like, Jesus. So, and then you got the guy trying to drag him off the street. And anyway,
well, they withdraw.
Huh? Also, the opposite late in the movie when they have the Bradleys fire on the upper. No, fire up there. There's nobody up there. There's nobody up there. It's clear to fire. And they're like, hey, Bob, whoever it was.
Get down here, yeah. and also, like,
the guy impersonated his CO.
Right.
You know, say you're the CO and give permission. You know, I was like, whoa, that's a ballsy thing to do.
Right. Because how did that? I've only seen it once. So make me more clear on that scene. Was the CO dead?
So they were calling in the Bradleys to do a retrieval, a CASEVAC, they were calling
CASEVAC, casualty evacuation,
Right. And so they were calling, and they're like, negative on the CASEVAC unless the CO approves it, because of the IED earlier.
Right. And Bradley had gotten damaged,
So, and then the leader of Bravo team goes, hey, dude, I'm going to need you to be the CEO, and you're going to approve of it. So he kind of goes into a corner and finds a quiet spot, and he's like, this is the CO. I approve the CASEVAC. And he's like, all right, we're on your way. And he's like,
he was pretending to be somebody who was not there.
Yeah,
he was. Yes, he was.
Yeah, so the brigade. What they said is they needed approval from brigade, which means that the CO, the commanding officer of their brigade,
Will Poulter, right,
needed to give verbal approval to get the Bradleys dispatched. So he was not the guy who was going to give approval was not on the field with them.
Okay, right? That's what I thought.
And so they're essentially saying we need to get approval from base to dispatch the Bradleys a second time since the first one got, to sustain damage and wasn't able to maintain field presence. So that's why he's like, hey, we're not going to get out of here unless you go and pretend to be the actual commanding officer.
Yeah, brigade is like 5,000 people. So that was it was a very rough call to make.
So he was pretending he had some stars somewhere that he didn't actually have.
I mean, you can get in big trouble for that, man. I'd be curious to know what happened when they found out, because it ended up being the right call, I guess. But man, you're rolling some big dice there.
Props to both of them for taking the risk, because they wouldn't have gotten out there otherwise.
Yeah, and that Bravo leader came up with that solution pretty quick. He's like, "Look, you're gonna improve." What's interesting is he didn't do it himself. Look, you're gonna risk a court martial. I got to watch, the front door over here.
Well, but because you didn't, but the radio men are the only ones who had the equipment that could punch out to the overall communications net. All the rest of them just had squad comms. So that's
that one guy started calling something in and forgot he unplugged his audio at one point. Yeah, like Bacon said, everything was broken down. It felt very stressful, just from the most general level all the way up to the minute details that they got you in. And this film it was the most experiential film I've watched, in years, where I felt like I was experiencing the film more so than watching it.
That's probably a good time to talk about how it affected us too, and kind of what our impressions are then, because it was you're right, it's a very affecting film.
Well, I'll say this. When I went to see it with Sable the second time, I brought my son with me. He's 12 years old. He's going to be 13 in July. And this was the first time I took my son to a war film at the theater. earlier this year, a couple months ago, maybe 2 months ago. Because I realized that, like, when I was a kid, we watched war films. Like, all of it. Like, I saw Platoon. I saw all the war films. And there's a thing with that. There's a genre that. And I realized, I was like, man, my son's 12. I was like, we haven't really watched a lot of war films. And I was like, maybe this whole generation is just not interested in this stuff. The way our generation, we were proximate to these things. And
Yes.
So about 2 months ago, I was like, Jacob, we need to watch some war films once in a while. I was like, you have to understand, as a man, you might have to go fight. You pray that you're not in this situation, but it could come up. And I was like, you need to watch war films. You have to understand that this is possible. So we watched Black Hawk Down, and it was intense, and it was the right amount of thing. Anyway, so this is the first time I took him to the theater to see it, and so there's a father-son bonding thing there. You're watching your counterparts, other men of your culture, go up against it, and you always wonder what you would do, and and also it just shows you what's possible, what you might have to do one day, and I hate saying that, you hate saying that, but it was very present in my mind as a young kid. So anyway, this movie will always be the first war film I took one of my sons to go see at the theater.
That's a landmark.
It is.
I can't recall. Did I say this to my brother or to you, Doug? I can't recall a film that I had such an intense physical reaction to since Apollo 13 in the theater.
Oh, you told me when we were right before the film started the second time, you were like, man,
yeah, okay.
Apollo 13, you said.
Yeah.
I was thinking about, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Well, I was thinking about intense movies that I had seen and how they rank. Apollo 13 is definitely one of them. Man, I was on the edge of my seat at every moment of that. Black Hawk Down is another one, and that one is still probably number one. It's like maintains the whole thing through. This one, I don't know how it goes with Apollo 13. It's been a while, but man, yeah.
Well, I knew I was going to be reduced to a blubbering, gibbering mess, and I was. I actually, when I saw it, I stayed to the end of the credits because that is my typical practice after having worked in Hollywood. That
is an old tradition.
Yes, I always stay to the end. And I stayed to the end, and the lights came back on, and there was a gentleman who stayed behind with me. He was a couple rows ahead, and he stood up, and he turned around to see who was still there. I was the only one there, and he looked at me, and he said something about having a lot of respect for them or something positive. And all I could muster was a very short nod, because if I opened my mouth, I was going to absolutely break down. This is typically how war films affect me, though. I get very emotionally invested in the individuals, especially if it is the retelling of an actual situation, or even if it's a dramatization but uses the names of real soldiers that fought in real combat. I get very emotionally invested in those, and this was intense. This one was intense.
Yeah.
I caught myself throughout, and I've had to do this all 3 times that I've seen the film. I caught myself several times having to go and take breaths, deep breaths, and then blow them out to help ratchet down the tension a little bit.
Yeah.
I almost broke down here talking about the screaming and pain having, it's just
it's extremely moving in that way. And I was gritting my teeth. I was wincing, like when Dozer's dragging Elliot back into the house and catches his ankle on the door.
That's the worst. I hate that. I wince every time I see it.
Yeah, it's like, and probably similar to Bacon. I wasn't as close to like actually breaking down, but I was the first time I saw it, I was there alone, and I I always make it a habit to sit through the credits anyway, but in this time I needed to sit through the credits to collect myself because I was almost physically disoriented, number one. And number two, there was that kind of a welling of just pent up emotion in my chest. So I was just breathing through it. And I know I mentioned this to you, Doug, and I had to sit there and try and collect my thoughts and figure out what the heck I was feeling. And I figured out finally that I was angry. I was pissed off. And I wasn't angry at anything. I wasn't angry at anything that had happened or any of the people involved or anything in general. I was just kind of generally angry. The same way that happens when you key up to get ready to fight. Because I realized, so I finally realized that I'd been built up to start fighting for the last 90 minutes, right? And I couldn't fight anything. And I think that may be one of the goals that they wanted to get across when they were making the film in the first place, is like, I mean, these guys still were physically fighting, but we've already mentioned how disparate their encounters with what their fighting is. It's almost like you're fighting the air, you know? It's like the bullets come from nowhere. You never see who throws the grenades, and it's just things happen, and you shoot back at nothing. And so I almost walked out of the theater a little dizzy the first time. Every time I've seen
that interesting scene where when the firefighting first begins, and they're like, "What is that?" And you see like shapes moving past the curtains, and there's one guy, he's just shooting through the door. Ping,
yeah.
ping, 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 and you can see, and it's I don't know, it set the tone for what we're about to do, and it just doesn't stop. I guess
you're muted. You're muted again, Heath.
Oh, Heath,
you're muted.
Heath, we can't hear you, buddy.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Heath. Still can't.
Still, no. Dang, I want to know what he said now too.
Keep now you're muted.
Now you're muted.
No, okay. No, it told me,
Yeah.
oh, you've been muted. No, like there were several times that like somebody went to stand by that window, and I was like, "Don't stand by that window."
Yeah, you don't do that.
Right.
Yeah, I was like, "Get away from that window."
But this movie subverted all that. You know, like there was even scenes, the exact same thing, Heath, where a guy would open the door and look around. I was like, "Oh, he's gonna get blown away."
Yeah, I know.
And then
You're
he
about,
doesn't.
and he
So-
didn't. He didn't.
You know, so it was weird. They made it feel more dangerous overall, and yet certain moments were conditioned to fear in a war movie were less dangerous.
Yeah,
It's really
something
weird,
something
right?
didn't happen. Right. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
There were a lot of times when they were out trying to get in the Bradleys or defending the Bradleys or something like that. I'm like, oh my God, their people are gonna get
Yeah, there was
killed.
a scene where the guys
And they
were on the
didn't.
roof. Right. There's a scene where they're getting off the roof. They're like army crawling off the roof, and the guy turns and he starts army crawling with his back to the insurgents, and you can see him up there in the background. I was like, oh, this guy's gonna get hammered. Even on my
He
third
does.
viewing, I know he doesn't get hit. I'm like, oh, that looks so vulnerable, crawling
Yeah.
away like that, you know,
Yeah.
being exposed. But he got out. You know, they made it. You know.
I was gonna give you another movie. When I was thinking about great intense movies that I just couldn't. Just white knuckled, as Stray is talking about. Air Force One, which we haven't talked about.
Oh yeah.
Great
but, you know,
movie.
Air Force One. That one kind of came back up on my rotation after I had seen Warfare, and the first time I saw Air Force One, I mean that was also a seriously intense film.
I
With
remember
Harrison
when
Ford?
I saw that movie.
Yeah.
I don't
I
think
saw
I've
that.
ever seen that.
I saw it as a double
Get off
feature.
my
It was
plane.
Air Force One and Spawn of all movies.
Oh,
And I was
wow.
with my family at a drive-in. We went to see a drive-in movie, and it was Air Force One and Spawn.
Air
We'll never
Force
forget
One is a fantastic movie, and I remember
haven't
just
seen
like
that in so long.
I just like the scenes are good, just intense, you know, and it's different, and you know, in some ways, like, and one of the reasons why I'm putting. And I was trying to think about Air Force One in relation to Warfare, because Warfare is non-conventional. So that things like Black Hawk Down can do some things to play upon your emotions and intentionally dramatizing things, which does make it more dramatic. And which is like, oh my God, like if you're trying to just watch an absolutely intense film second to second, I still think that Black Hawk Down edges Warfare out. But something like Apollo 13, Air Force One, God,
We
we
were soldiers.
Stuck.
Oh,
with
We
that.
Were Soldiers.
I've seen We Were Soldiers. It's been a long time. I don't remember that one as much.
That was
But We Were
Penny.
Soldiers is one of those two. I think I was just, oh my God, what is going to happen?
Yeah, We Were Soldiers is great.
And that's a very when that kind of film hits, you remember it forever.
Yes,
I agree.
Oh yeah, this is. I mean, even if I hadn't enjoyed this enough to go see it 2 more times after the first time, just the first time through would have been absolutely seared into my memory. I would never forget it.
But do you think
Das Boot? BGD's, I think, talking about Das Boot in the chat. I agree.
BGD says Wolfgang Peterson really knows how to manage the tension of a thriller. Das Boot is one of my favorite films. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's incredible.
Das Boot. But okay, so I would say like Air Force One. That was also a very. What year was that? I forget. I mean, it was late '90s or something like that.
Yeah, it was late '90s.
film. So
it wasn't just after The Fugitive. It was like when
it may have
Harrison
been.
Ford was an action star.
1997.
Well, I was watching some clips of Air Force One, and and somebody said in the comments like, yeah, BGD says 1997. Okay, that's what I thought. I thought it was late '90s. And somebody in the comments said, "Wow, when Harrison Ford made that movie, he was exactly the right age to be a U.S. president. And ironically, 30 years later, he is still exactly the right age to be a U.S. president."
That's funny.
But yeah, I was thinking about which we should probably talk about the relationship with this movie to U.S. politics or jingoism. Even some people were surprised that A24 had made this film. But when I think about comparing this movie to Air Force One, which is very pro-American, and think about the time in which that was made, 1997, as BGD is pointing out. Okay, and what my feelings are about all of that. Like, I didn't think that this film, when also comparing to Black Hawk Down, Air Force One, Black Hawk Down, Warfare, I would not say this is a pro-American film. It's also not anti-American.
It's pro-soldier film.
It's pro-soldier. It is pro-soldier.
It's pro-soldier. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But it's like, okay, this is what you deal with. And that's a very different feeling too. When you're talking about white knuckling and being an intense film.
I agree.
It's not trying to put in. Yeah, that it really is. Even in all the great films we've already named out, it really stands apart just because it doesn't have any particular message that it's trying to push.
No,
or any particular storyline that it's trying. Yeah, it doesn't have. It's not following a storyline, so it's free to do so without any investment in the outcome, and that makes it, as Doug calls it, almost a purely experiential film. Not experimental. Experiential is like the reason you go there is to be in combat for an hour. That's what it's about. So
yeah, I agree, and I agree, Heath. It wasn't jingoistic at all. Late '90s. 1996. You had Independence Day. An alien invasion is met by the United States Army, and we beat them up. You had in 1998. You had Armageddon, where we take out asteroids with our oil men. And 1997, Air Force One. So, late '90s was extremely pro-American. We really thought of ourselves as invincible. We certainly have toned that down. But what was interesting is this wasn't anti-American either, and that's why I wanted to point out that this was pro-soldier. It actually made me very much respect the soldiers in the film, and I was impressed with them despite all the vulnerabilities there. But it didn't have to tell me anything. It just had to make me experience it. And so when the end credits rolled and they showed the real soldiers, like showing them and stuff, I felt genuine appreciation, real grateful for those guys, without being prompted by anything specific. So it was oddly, it was oddly positive in a sense by staying neutral, in the storytelling.
I think maybe that ties into a comment that Stray Kismet made a little bit ago, saying that Vote is in my table of vets. I guess the RPG table full of vets really liked. They didn't like Hurt Locker, but they really liked Warfare.
I just found it. My table of vets disliked Hurt Locker. They were like this movie. Yeah, I mean, I saw Hurt Locker. It's been a while ago. I remember that being a big deal.
It was a big deal in Hollywood.
Came out.
It was a big deal
because it's very, very explicitly anti-war, right? I mean, and it kind of. Boy,
well, we were still in Iraq when it came out, so that came out in 2009.
Did you guys ever see Jarhead?
Something like that. No.
And Jarhead too. Yes, I saw that one.
Jarhead. Yeah,
I have not. Is that one? What's that one
about? The same time.
That was Jake Gyllenhaal. That really dealt with PTSD, right?
Yeah. Well, it dealt with training,
Jarhead,
and
2005.
then also PTSD. And then there's Full Metal Jacket, which is a cult classic.
Yeah.
Apocalypse
yes.
Now.
Which I have.
Now for sure.
Yeah.
And then there's the king of the war movie, Stripes. That's a joke.
Well, I have not seen
Stripes.
I don't even remember. I barely remember that one.
It's a Bill Murray comedy.
It's like early baby boomer, early SNL type.
Yeah, that's
humor.
old, isn't it?
Yes.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
Funny, ha ha.
Yes.
Hurt Locker was 2008. So Jarhead was 2005. Hurt Locker was 2008.
So interesting. So this movie, the events that Warfare depicts would have taken place before Hurt Locker came out.
Before Hurt Locker came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. I know. I mean, 2006 seems like, even though it seems current, that's a while ago. When I'm thinking about what I was doing,
it's 20 years ago.
It's almost 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah. How dare you tell me how old I am?
Yeah.
It is crazy to think how much technology has changed and advanced.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine what's going on in Ukraine, man. Like that's your modern war right there.
Yeah. Ukraine is completely different than anything that's happened before it.
Yeah.
It is.
We
it is a
haven't
drone
even really
war.
gotten a lot of good looks at it. It's weird. I get all these feeds that come on social media, and it'll be like, fighting. And I don't even pay attention now, but early on, it was like fighting in Ukraine. All of it was like AI generated combat, and I was like, boy, how are you going to know what's going on? There's a remarkable lack of footage of this war. You don't see anything coming out.
We'll get films eventually, I'm sure. I would think.
Most of it is just drone cameras. That's the famous footage of the two Bradleys taking out the T-75 or whatever it was, T-80, I think it was a T-80 or C-72, one of the two. That was all drone footage. That's some of there's very little that's not just a drone overhead or an actual camera on a suicide drone or something like that, an actual combat drone.
Well,
or every once in a while you get body cam footage a little bit.
I'm thinking about, Afghanistan war films.
Lone Survivor.
Oh, I don't know.
American Sniper.
American Sniper. Have you seen there? Okay,
so
American
Sniper. Afghanistan was with
We Three Kings was Afghanistan too, wasn't it?
No, I thought that was Iraq.
It could have
been. Three Kings. It's just Three Kings.
Oh, just Three Kings. Sorry, yeah, you're right.
Three Kings.
Yeah,
because I looked that one up a moment ago.
Was it Iraq?
No, that was Iraq. Three Kings is Iraq.
Okay.
Yeah, Lone Survivor. There's one called 1,000 kilograms. Hold on. What was it?
Okay, no, I'm thinking about. Okay, when I think about Afghanistan war films, I think about Restrepo. Have you seen
Restrepo? Is incredible. That's a documentary.
That's
real.
True.
How about Operation Dumbo Drop? I'm sorry. I'll stop.
No.
That came right after Stripes.
Yeah.
That's a real operation, though.
There was
the Outpost.
Lone Survivor.
The Outpost.
That's what I was thinking of.
Oh, the Outpost. That's with Clint Eastwood's son.
Yeah,
Clint
that one
Eastwood's
has
son is in that
Legolas
one.
in it too.
Oh, Orlando Bloom.
Orlando Bloom.
Orlando Bloom, right? Orlando Bloom is an Outpost. I think about Restrepo. I think about Outpost, and I think about Armadillo.
I'm not familiar with that one at all. I haven't even heard of it.
Armadillo. This one, I watched this one. This was it was about Danish soldiers, and it was
Interesting.
and it was and when it played, it was like majorly politically significant in Europe when this movie came out about Danish. Because I even think it was not in English, and you had to read it. And there was some movie that I believe I used. I might have used Restrepo. Was I teaching when that came out? That was 2010. Yeah, I might have actually used Restrepo in Human Geography. But yeah, I guess we will get some Ukraine war films soon.
I'm sure we will.
Maybe, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised.
There's a really good movie. I'm trying to find the title of it. I thought it was 1,000 Kilometers. Oh, The Covenant. The Covenant is about the guy who goes back for his interpreter. It's an American soldier. His interpreter saved his life.
Yeah.
And dragged an Afghanistan. He dragged him for like 1,000 miles or 1,000 kilometers or something to safety. Saved his life. Fought off the Taliban. And then he went back to go to get him out of Afghanistan. The Covenant, really, really good movie. I liked that one in Afghanistan.
I just looked it up.
Yeah, and then that Lone Survivor, that's got I think Mark Wahlberg in it or something. But it's based off the book by Marcus Luttrell, which I read. I read all these books.
Yeah, Luttrell's story is crazy.
The Last Starfighter. But it's. I guess this is just dealing with getting old. But the things like Black Panther, like the bad guy in that was an Iraq War veteran. That.
Remember in Lost, Saeed? He was a torturer for the Iraqi Republican Guard. Remember that?
Right? Yes, I do remember that.
The Marvel MCU starts
that
with
was during
Tony Stark in Afghanistan.
Oh, that's true.
Right? Yeah. Yes, it does. That's true. That's true. So Tony Stark was in Afghanistan. Yes.
In 2008, that movie came out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate hearing about how old these movies are. That's the worst.
It's shocking. It's actually shocking.
I know.
How much time has been passing? Because I was like, when I hear 2016, that sounds like super recent. I'm like, that's almost that's a decade ago. 2016. What the heck?
1990 was 10 years ago. I will die on this hill.
I know. It seems like 90, so that was 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
I know,
no, it is kind of weird. It's almost like everything after 2001 is its own time warp.
Well, for me, the big culture change came around 2014. Where the films before 2014 had some messaging in there, but they were still and then after 2014, it really got heavy on the messaging.
Yeah, it's been a good decade now of just total. Well, that is. I won't say anything about that tonight unless we want to go there. But I will say it's very refreshing that Warfare doesn't have anything like that.
It has
it doesn't. Right. I will say that it's over the past decade, it has been very hard to find the ones that are worthwhile.
Right.
I will leave it at that.
Yeah, and this one is worthwhile.
The postmodernist infiltration of society that's been occurring for the last 100 years was at its peak over the last decade.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But guys, I hate to do this because I love talking with you guys and it's been a while, but I'm going to have to get running. I haven't had dinner yet and my son just got back.
Before you get running.
It's been 2.5 hours. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, before you get running, we talked about cyberpunk. We talked about other genres. So Andor is 100% Star Wars cyberpunk.
Oh,
watch it again.
Right.
Pay attention.
I didn't get
100% Star Wars
I need to
cyberpunk.
rewatch season 1. I'm gonna have to watch season 1 so I can get into season 2. And I just was not able to do it over the weekend. I just was not.
Now the time to do a stream or something where we talk Andor, let me know. We keep doing it on my channel if it makes it easier.
Oh, I'd love to talk Andor.
Okay, because I just saw episode 1.
Yet. I haven't been
of
on your
season
channel
2.
yet, Doug. What's that all about? I'm kidding.
It's only out.
I'm
Like
kidding.
episode 1's only out, right? I mean, it's not the whole thing, right?
No, there's the first 3 episodes are out
First 3 episodes
Of season 2.
of season 2, and the first episode was good. It didn't blow me away. It was it's very high budget. You could see the money on the screen. It had its slow moments still, which is characteristic of Andor, but it opened really well. There was a really cool TIE fighter sequence there. And I'm curious about the next 2 episodes. I did hear, unfortunately, there's some major controversy in episode 3, but we'll get to that.
Oh, I heard about that too.
Yeah, but yeah, Bacon. If you want to talk some Andor, let me know. I'll catch up on the episodes and we could talk about it.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it.
All right.
I'm
Okay,
letting
and I
you
know
know.
Keith
You have
wants
to
to
find
watch
time to watch.
season
I
1.
don't know. All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here, and thank you, Bacon. Thank you, Doug, and thank you, Sable Titterpig Rancher. Thank you so much for coming on. It was like old times. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
yes.
thank you.
Yes, it was.
Thank
Maybe
you
Andor.
for having
Okay,
us
I gotta
on.
watch some Andor, so we can talk about it. I do have to watch it. So, all right.
Awesome.
Good night, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Have a
Take
wonderful
care.
Thanks,
week.
All right,
everyone.
take it
Please
easy,
like the
guys.
stream.
We're out of here.
Yeah, like and subscribe.
Good night, everybody.